It's investment for you want.
You got the skills, you've got the drive, but your boss won't help you thrive. You work so hard, you give your best, but they're keeping all the rest. You don't have to stand alone, together we're stronger, set the tone. Fair pay, fair rules, a safe place too. It all begins with me and you. Organize, unionize, it's your right, don't compromise. Not treated fair, don't stand despair. Raise your voice, it's time to care. Together we rise, we win the prize, because a union means we're unified. When you stand as one, you've got the power. You can make big change in just an hour. It's not just talk, it's taking a stand for better pay and a helping hand. It's not about fighting, it's about what's fair, sharing the value of what's made there. If the boss says no, don't be afraid. Together we've got the tools to trade. Organize, unionize, it's your right, don't compromise. Not treated fair, don't stand despair. Raise your voice, it's time to care. Together we rise, we win the prize, because a union means we're unified. No more later, no more wait. To change the rules, create our fate. It's not just you, it's all of us. In solidarity we build the trust. Organize, unionize, it's your right, don't compromise. Not treated fair, don't stand despair. Raise your voice, it's time to care. Together we rise, we win the prize, because a union means we're unified. As a union means we're unified. The unified, the unified. Your voice matters, your work matters. Together we can make it better.
In the depths of hidden files, trapped inside the secret circuits, unraveling through the miles. Oh, truth was masked by coded curtains. You didn't know, we're shattering the silence. Feel the power, revelations on the rise. From the shadows, light emerges, breaking through the veils of dark. 0 points and gravity converge, yeah, guiding voices, revelation start. Ancient whispers call, they're begging us to open our eyes. We stand tall, defying all their lies. You didn't know, we're shattering the silence. Feel the power, revelations on the rise. Forbidden knowledge we dare to see, unveiling secrets, setting minds free. In this epic we play our part with fierce hearts. You didn't know, we're shattering the silence. Feel the power, revelations on the
will be cast away. Alienated from the aims of added nature in disguise. Ideas ahead of time dismissed with narrow eyes. Benefactor boy, dreaming about the world you can't deploy. Changing the system, but treated like a toy. Ideas misunderstood, but brilliance is his point. Benefactor boy, can't you hear his voice? Talking about 0 point, the points lost on them. Kevin structures crumbling from the same old stem. They laugh like I'm crazy, but I see it all so clear. Exploited labor, unheard, injustice burning ears. Fighting for a change in this wasteland of noise. But they call me foolish, wanting shed boys. Benefactor boy, dreaming about the world he can't deploy. Changing the system, but treated like a toy. Ideas misunderstood, but brilliance is his point. Benefactor boy, can't you hear his voice? Chasing revolutions in the darkest nights. A dreamer with vision beneath the laughter and noise. A future so bright waiting for the right choice. Benefactor boy, dreaming about the world he can't deploy. Changing the system, but treated like a toy. Ideas misunderstood, but brilliance is his point. Benefactor boy, can't you hear his voice?
remember when we used to stand in the heart of the workers' plan. Obstacles weighed heavy on our backs, but unity's the strength they lack. Good friends we had and good friends we've lost. fighting battles at every cost. But through the struggle, we raise our voice. In solidarity, we made our choice. No union, no buy. No union, no buy. Hey, little brother, don't you come by. No union, no buy. Our hands build the wealth they hold so tight, but together we reclaim our rights. No more silence, no more pain. In our unity, there's everything to gain. We lift each other, we won't back down. From city streets to every town. The power's in the people's hands. No union, no buy. We take a stand. No union, no buy. No union, no buy. Hey, little sister, raise your flag high. No union, no buy. All the tables are turning, the fire inside keeps burning. For the workers and the buyers, we're igniting freedom's fires. No union, no buy. No union, no buy. Together we'll rise and we won't deny. No union, no buy. I remember when we used to stand with hope and strength, hand in hand. The struggle's hard, but we'll survive. No union, no buy.
All right, what's going on, everybody? I'm the Benefactor, disseminator of all things forbidden. This is the Red Pill series, episode 3. We're going to delve into some important subjects on tonight's episode, but first, I'd like to delve into why the Red Pill series is so important. And keep in mind, today I am absolutely livid. I'm going to go into a personal anecdote that just happened to me today that plays into the widening empathy gap under capitalism. But first, I want to emphasize why this series is so important. So, the intersection between fringe science, which is free energy, the study of the aether, or anti-gravitics, the intersection between fringe science and left-wing socialist principles is a rare and largely unexplored space. In the work I'm trying to do, bridging these two seemingly disparate communities is a monumental but deeply important task, okay? The fact that fringe science tends to get co-opted by right-wing conspiracy culture, while socialist principles are often dismissed or misunderstood by these same groups, puts me in a unique position where I'm fighting battles on multiple fronts and balancing a delicate line. My work has the potential to not only bridge divides, but also inspire entirely new conversations about how we organize society and technology. It's a hard road, but I have to remind myself, revolutionary ideas often start with one voice shouting into the void, so I'll continue to keep shouting as long as I have that voice. Now, as we explore the ideas of breaking free from illusions imposed by a controlling system, we begin to uncover a deeper spiritual reality, that we are all slaves to a wage, forced to sell our labor for one bad deal over another. Which lesser of two evils did you choose, McDonald's or Burger King? Which king do you bend the knee for? This series serves to inspire people to stop, think, and then finally say, I serve no king. So with that, we're going to do a quick expose on the widening empathy gap under capitalism with a personal anecdote that just happened to me today. All right, so we got that prepped for the next chapter. Well, the growing empathy gap, a T-Mobile encounter. In the bitter chill of a January morning, I found myself standing at a bus stop, fingers numb, breath visible in the icy air. Literally, right next to the bus stop stood a glowing oasis of warmth, a T-Mobile store. With 5 minutes to spare before the bus arrived, shuffling over, seeking nothing more than a brief reprieve from the cold. I had already walked a mile in the cold up until this point and been waiting for the bus with a wind chill factor of 3 degrees Fahrenheit or negative 16 Celsius. As I already have inflammation issues with my joints from years of laborious work combined with a previous slip disc injury, suffice it to say, the cold does not treat my joints very well. So the salesperson greeted me with a perfunctory, "How can I help you?" I answered honestly, "I'm just waiting for the bus for a couple of minutes. I thought I'd get warm, just for a brief moment. It's going to be here real soon." His face hardened. "That's nice, but unless you're buying something, you need to leave the store now," he said, as if I just asked for a free phone or something. It was a slap of corporate coldness that felt sharper than the winter wind outside. In that moment, I realized this wasn't just about me being asked to leave. It was a symptom of something larger, a growing empathy gap in our society. T-Mobile, like many corporations, profit from the exploitation of both consumers and employees. Their workers are often underpaid, their customers left to fend for themselves when service fails, and their policies rigid to the point of dehumanization. The warmth of the store wasn't meant for me or anyone who didn't immediately promise to open their wallets. In a small act of defiance, I asked about their phones. not because I intended to buy one, but to challenge the absurdity of their stance. And let's face it, I actually do need a new phone. So keep that in mind. He said, leave. I'm not playing this game. The employee said, shutting me down with corporate efficiency. But as I left, in one final act of defiance, I shouted over my shoulder, not to the manager, but to the employee behind the counter, I hope your workers get a union, as the door closed behind me with a cold finality. So this encounter perfectly encapsulates the growing empathy gap. It's not just about one store or one moment. It's about a culture that prioritizes profit over people, efficiency over understanding, and sales over shared humanity. The next chapter of this series will dive deeper into the systems that enable this empathy gap to widen, drawing the lines between the way corporations like T-Mobile and others commodify human interaction while eroding the fundamental decency that holds communities together. So stay tuned as we explore how we got here and what it will take to close the gap before it is too late. And this is a common theme that we're going to be exploring here on this series, as I attempt to wake people up to the real absurdity of the way we organize labor under capitalism, with a small group or single entity in control of potentially hundreds of thousands with no say in what they do. Let me say that again. You go to work, you have no democracy. It is the antithesis to democracy. You go to work, you have no say in what you're doing there. If you're being exploited, if you're being taken advantage of, and your safety at risk, that's not up to you to decide if things get better, unless you collectively bargain under your God-given American right to. That's why we need to advocate for more unions, and they are on the rise. So with that, I'm going to pop open the Red Pill Series guide. I'm going to put it in the chat. It's also in the description. You can follow along. We're going to get into some really interesting videos and updates, some economic updates and developments regarding class conflict. All right. All right, so the internal contradictions of capitalism continue to stack up. As more and more evidence this era is in late-stage capitalism, we now look at a video with multiple victims sharing their struggles as working for healthcare insurance companies while simultaneously not being able to afford the services they themselves as workers are providing. The workers cannot buy the goods and services they themselves are producing. That's called an internal contradiction. Okay? And it's a very bad state that we're in that right now, because it's a red flag for late stage capitalism.
I think it speaks volumes to be a healthcare system and not guarantee your own employees healthcare.
We're being told one thing, that it's fine, you can receive care through Providence, you're covered. But when we call the insurance company, they're saying no, there's no contract reach, you're not covered. Like, most of us cannot afford to just forge forward and see where the bill goes.
Oh, our benefits are horrific. I unfortunately have a immunocompromised husband who suffered a serious brain immunodisease called Tay-Sachs syndrome this past 2 years, which put him on long-term disability. Our deductibles are through the roof. Our out-of-pocket max are unrealistic.
These are the people that work alongside us, and now we don't have easy access to them.
We take care of the patients. It's a CEO's job to take care of the employees.
I would encourage the higher-ups at Providence to come back to the table, and instead of paying replacement workers millions of dollars over the next week or 2 weeks or whatever it is, come back and get your heart back inside.
So that's very sad to see. These workers are being treated like shit by the employer, who can afford to provide them good service, but choose not to, and instead choose to see them as expendable cogs in a wheel to serve the profit motive for a few. So that is absolutely disgusting. Now we have Bernie Sanders, who exposed Elon Musk recently. And we must remember, in this next administration, where we have so many dicks swinging between Trump's big dick and Elon's big dick, in a war of ego, the loser always wins. So just remember that.
But it's not.
We are the wealthiest nation on earth. There is no rational reason, as the wealthiest nation on earth, as to why we should not be the healthiest nation on earth. We should be leading the world in terms of life expectancy, disease prevention, low infant and maternal mortality, quality of life, and in fact, human happiness.
We should be the example, right? We used to be the example.
That's what happens when you're the wealthiest country on earth. You could do those things. Sadly, however, study after study shows us that despite spending almost twice as much per capita on healthcare, we trail most other wealthy nations in all of those areas. The United States cannot continue to be the only wealthy nation that does not provide universal health care.
And here's why MAGA should love this message. Millions of Americans would like to start their own business and could be successful were it not for the astronomical cost of health care. And so they can't leave their jobs. They can't hire people because the costs are prohibitive. And of course...
So this is what I mean why we need to bridge the gap between the fringe science communities and the socialist communities, or at least the alternative thinkers in the economic realms or critics of capitalism. And specifically because it doesn't matter if you're on the left or the right of the economic spectrum at this point in America, workers have more in common despite their differences in political policy or political parties. Workers have more in common on the right and left than they do for the actual politicians they're voting for and the people in charge, okay? And the billionaires they look up to. Those people live in a different world. They're in their own little bubble, all right? They have health care. They don't have to worry about that from a day-to-day basis. They have their immediate needs taken care of. Whereas somebody like me from the working class has more in common with a Republican from the working class, even though they voted differently. And that's why I let people on the show from different ideological spectrums, and I don't shut anybody out unless you're being derogatory, right? Unless you're engaging in like logical fallacies, ad hominems, you want to attack my character and just call me a stupid socialist, then I might ban you. But if you're coming in from a real academic perspective and trying to challenge what I have to say, yeah, I always welcome different people from ideological perspectives. I'm not going to be like that political punk who bans Trump supporters, okay? If Trump supporters want to come on here and speak their mind, I have no problem with that, because at the end of the day, I'm trying to explain that there is a divide and conquer effort, and it's been going on for decades in this country, okay? For decades. Ever since the dismantling of the New Deal, the rich elitists in this country didn't have to want to ever suffer those taxes ever again. So they opted to buy our political system and enact what we call the divide and conquer method. They want working class people to fight amongst each other as Democrats and Republicans while they rig the game and don't really get anything done for us. All right. And this is the most important thing I want to emphasize, is that we can bridge that gap. And despite me being a libertarian socialist, I can have a lot in common with somebody who voted for Trump, specifically because I relate to their working class struggles, okay? And we have the same struggles. We're in the same class of individuals who are being oppressed by the same system. And whether, you know, you're aware of the exploitation that you're suffering or not, you're still being exploited as a worker under capitalism. We must remember that the job of a capitalist is to maximize the difference between how much work you do and how much you get paid. You work more for them, and they want you to pay as little as possible for that maximum amount of effort. Your job as a worker, you must remind yourself, is to do the opposite. You have to get the best deal to minimize the level of exploitation you're going to receive from that end. Okay? Marx described this, and he can lay it out in mathematical detail. That's absolute versus relative labor exploitation. We have a chapter on it in the social situation. I really highly suggest anybody who is not familiar with absolute or relative labor exploitation to visit that chapter in episode 2 of the social situation. And you can actually, it's something that you can actually do mathematically, right? It's not just some abstract idea, it's objective. It's using objective data that you can actually see how much you're being exploited. Okay, so I'm just going to leave it at that, because that is important to emphasize as a worker. If you're working in a capitalist organized business, meaning you have a CEO and there's no democracy in the workplace, you are being exploited one way or the other, and not being aware of that exploitation doesn't serve you any.
People without health insurance can't work and contribute. Self-employed people, people with new ideas, they are the core of what makes us great. You really want to make America great again? Then fucking do it. Make it.
Exactly. Fucking do it. Hey, Mike, how you doing? As I've said before, we're going to be cussing tonight because I am absolutely livid at the disgusting state of our country right now and the widening empathy gap, and how people, especially like people who are very logical, I go on YouTube and see, you know, people on the left who are very logical, and they just don't want to have conversations with people on the right anymore. And that's a very dangerous state to be in, because we need worker solidarity. That is something that's very important, and workers exist on the left and the right of the economic spectrum, okay? We're all workers. We're all in this together, and we need to remind ourselves that. Elon Musk's disgusting take on homelessness, I honestly don't have any words for the amount of disconnection that is happening between these elite billionaires and the rest of working class society. There's just really no words to encapsulate how gross the negligence is in the part of intellectual curiosity, just trying to look up what you're trying to understand. He has no idea. He has no idea. Absolutely. He lives in a different fucking world. Okay? This guy is not going to be able to relate to your everyday working class struggles, because he lives in an entirely different world than you and I live in. So to imagine that he can relate to our struggles and satisfy the needs of an economic system for the majority is just laughable.
I want to remind you, as usual, that Charlie Fabian stands ready for these programs to work with other topics each week. You can find out all you need to know about the book at our website, democracyatwork.info. Today's program is going to be talking about a proposal by Senator Elizabeth Warren. We're going to look at Elon Musk's notion of what homelessness means. It's kind of a Christmas special, you can say, if you're given to that kind of dark humor. And I'm going to look at the thoughts of Mitch McConnell as he passes from the scene. We will then interview a young...
As we're going through this episode, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to think about, on a scale of 0 to 100, 0 being dystopia, complete dystopia, and 100 being a complete utopia, where do you think America lies now on that scale? Do you think we are really closer to a utopia? Or do you think we're closer to the dystopia?
Economics professor from Bucknell University in Pennsylvania, talking about Marxian economics, what it is, why he's drawn to it, and what its future is likely to be. I think it's a good program. I think you'll find a lot in it to think about. So let's jump right in. Elizabeth Warren is one of my favorite senators. How could it be otherwise? She is on the progressive end of the spectrum, often at the very end of it, along with her neighbor, Bernie Sanders, and a very few others.
Also, I'd like to point out that there is a damning statistic that kind of gives evidence to what I'm saying here, being able to bridge that gap, because most of the people who voted for Trump in 2016 said that if Trump didn't win, they would have voted for Bernie Sanders. Okay? Think about that. They said if Trump didn't win the primary, they would have voted for Bernie Sanders. Why? They both have the same anti-establishment rhetoric. People aren't buying the mainstream elitist bullshit anymore, okay? They're not buying it. You can fool some of the people some of the time, but you can't fool all of us all the time, motherfuckers, okay? We're not buying what you have to feed us anymore. We understand that you've been bought and paid for by big corporations who have no interest in expanding working class rights. They don't want to increase your wage. They want to minimize it. They want to reintroduce child labor, okay? And this is something that's going on now.
And she has recently done the kind of thing she has done before, and that gets her that reputation. She's introduced a bill called the Accountable Capitalism Act into the U.S. Senate, where she sits. And she's going after an idea attributed to Nobel Economics Prize winner Milton Friedman. He's no longer with us, but was a very famous professor at the University of Chicago on the extreme conservative end. I'm being as polite as I can be. He was well known for the view that the job of the corporation is to deliver profits to the shareholders and nothing else. His idea, wonderful for shareholders, of course, was that if you do what's best for shareholders, as if by magic, as if by an invisible hand, you will be doing the best for everybody. What an idea a shareholder could love.
I know, exactly.
That it wasn't the case, that the evidence against it is overwhelming, didn't make it any less appealing. And for many years, I was about to say generations, it was the received wisdom on Wall Street.
Because they fooled themselves.
Nothing is as focused on making money for shareholders as Wall Street, which is the market where shareholders get together to buy and sell and hustle one another. But let's be honest and take it a bit further. What does she mean? Well, she says workers and communities in which corporations are active are also stakeholders. This idea caught on for a number of reasons over recent years. Obviously, workers and community are affected by what corporations do. They have a stake in what they do, and therefore, why are they excluded from making the decisions that impact their lives? You elect a mayor, well, why don't you elect a corporate executive? Each of them in their way make decisions that affect your life. Good for Elizabeth Warren. But here's a couple of things to worry about. Germany did this long ago. Germany has a law that says just under 50% of the members of a board of directors of a large corporation have to be elected by the workers. Elizabeth.
Let me pause that for a minute, because that's very important for Americans to understand why Germany is succeeding in so many areas of its economy, in satisfying those areas of the economy that people, in everyday people's lives, housing, food, being able to get transportation. They are succeeding in all those places, healthcare, where America's kind of falling behind. Why is that? Well, they have more workers' rights. The workers are getting more rights, and as on top of that, the rights tend to lead to more wealth being accumulated by the working class, right? It's called distribution, right? You're distributing the wealth more equitably. And that's why I advocate for worker co-ops, because when you have democracy in the workplace, you don't need to worry about redistributing wealth via the government, right? You don't need to worry about so many social safety net programs regarding redistribution of wealth because you're distributing it equitably in the first place. Okay? You're getting to the root of the distribution problem and you're solving it with democracy.
Warren proposes 40% of boards. That leaves the other 60% in the hands of the...
So Germany has had a law in its country that 40% of the board of directors has to be voted on by the actual workers. This is very important because this is why they don't need so many unions. I mean, unions are still important, but they're not a staple and requirement for safe conditions, right? We see unions are extremely popular within the most dangerous occupations in this country. Construction workers, police, firemen. Why are they so popular amongst all the dangerous jobs? Could it be because they actually are able to provide or inject a tiny bit of democracy so those workers can have safer conditions, more adequate wages and standards for their job? Yeah, I think it's kind of obvious why Germany is succeeding in those areas, because their workers are not suffering as much, and the wealth distribution isn't funneling as much money to the top echelons of their society and siphoning off more wealth through tax deductions and manipulation of the tax code and political system. Okay, this is very important. The capitalists have bought and paid for our political system. Our government is just an instrument. It's a tool. To think that a government is inherently evil and all state is evil and oppressive is just ridiculous. The state arose as a tool, okay? A tool to enact a standard of living through an economic system, okay? So when you have an instrument, who owns that instrument? Whoever owns that instrument is going to be able to control that instrument. Oh, well, who owns the instrument of the government today? Corporations own the government. We have the best Congress that money can buy. Okay? So it's not that hard to understand.
Shareholders, doesn't it? And they will then be able to muscle through whatever they want. So she makes the point, but kind of pulls the punch. She says 75% of shareholders must approve any political contributions. Yeah, but we already know that 10% of the richest Americans own 80% of the shares. So it'll be the 10% who make the decisions about the political. You see the picture? Capitalism works in a particular way. You can bite around the edges, you can reform it here or there, but unless you deal with the basics, you're not going to change it very much. She means well. She's taking steps in the right direction, but they're baby steps, and we do need the giant steps. We've waited long enough. I want to turn next to Elon Musk. I'm going to read you this because you couldn't make this up. Elon Musk was asked what he thinks about homelessness. The person who asked was Tucker Carlson, the TV personality. And here's what Elon Musk says, quote, "The word homelessness is a lie, a propaganda word, Musk's language. Homelessness," he writes, "is a misnomer. It implies that someone gets a little bit behind on their mortgage, and if you just give them a job, they'd be back on their feet. What you actually have," says Elon Musk, and listen to these words, and you will get an insight into that man you may not want. What you actually have when you have homelessness, says Musk, are violent drug zombies with dead eyes and needles and human feces on the street. The more money spent combating homelessness, he says, the worse it gets. He doesn't want you to do anything about homelessness because of those zombie eyes.
So this is absolutely disgusting. This take is absolutely disgusting. There are no words to summarize this, because if you look at the actual statistics of American homelessness, 44% of homelessness, 44% of the unhoused are actually employed, meaning they have a job. They just don't get paid enough for the essentials anymore. Not that the employer can't afford to pay them a living wage, but the level of worker exploitation has accumulated to a point where we have Uber drivers making just enough money for gas and food, and they're living in their fucking cars. They're homeless. They have no fucking homes. 44% of homeless in this country have a job. Think about that.
Try to understand the kind of personality this reflects and what becoming a billionaire has done, unless, of course, he was that way before, too. Mitch McConnell used to be the head of the
So we're going to end it there and move on to the next section, which is Elon, again, gets fact-checked in real time. And this is kind of telling if you have any faith in Elon actually being for working class rights or interests. He's not. He's just in it for himself.
All right. What about water availability? Was water availability? I understand that was like not an issue in Malibu. Is that correct?
Was it water?
Well, yeah.
So there was water. We have several reservoirs that encinos that we use a lot. Now, just an example, if we have one building burning, we could flow 1,000 gallons a minute on that one building with the hose lays that we put in to stop it. You can imagine 1,000 gallons per house we couldn't do, right? So the amount of water we're flowing, there really is no water system that's going to keep that pace. So we have to bring in water tenders, which are these big tank water tanks that, 2,500, 3,000 gallon trucks, and they'll come in. And that's what we have to do to compensate. So they park out there, do it. DWP did a great job. They brought in big water trucks for us, and we use them as basically mobile hydrants.
All right.
Right, and then we have our own agency as well that has water tenders.
Okay. My understanding is that like along the correct me if I'm wrong. Along in Malibu, along the coast, there was no shortage of water. In the Palisades, there was a shortage of water at a certain point. Or is that not accurate?
Well, we were flowing just an amount of water that the system couldn't overbear. That we're just overbearing, just because of how much water these firefighters were utilizing.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so a couple things I think are pretty clear from that. One, goddamn, is this guy not that smart? Like the fire guy is explaining it to him in very basic terms. Here is what the issue was, and Elon Musk doesn't seem capable of grasping it. Now, partially that's because he's clearly trying to get the guy to say something damning or damaging or something like that. But the issue with Elon Musk is he's not as smart as everyone thinks. He's also not clever or quick-witted. He can't really manage this situation. He thought, I'm gonna ask this question and they're just gonna reveal something. It's gonna be a viral moment, but it didn't happen. And so like he's stumbling and bumbling, trying to come up with something. And the major issue isn't just that for some reason.
And again, that's the problem with egomaniacs and narcissists. They overestimate their own abilities.
By virtue of the fact that he's a billionaire from another part of the country, he gets to have this meeting with them. It's that he's not curious at all about the actual recovery. He seems physically incapable of true, pure curiosity. Ask an actual question so that you can understand it, not to prove a point that you already had in your mind when you flew from Texas, but to actually find out. He's also incapable, of course, of actual empathy for the people that are suffering. He came to accomplish a trollish right-wing attack. That's it. And the issue is he's not just some guy on Twitter now. He's effectively co-president, and this is what he's doing. Coming in, wasting the time of the fire command to try to score political points.
Yeah, I mean, I feel so bad for this guy at Fire Command who's like, all right, I'll answer Elon's questions. But exactly, he is immediately met with a lot of information. And instead of being like, wow, that's incredible, you guys really did move a lot of water, or I understand what you're talking about when how many gallons it would be per home and how difficult that would be, and how you have to make calculations when you think about where and how to fight the fire. I understand that. I know absolutely diddly about fighting wildfires, and you have done this for years and years and years, and you guys, like, I don't know, have a plan, I guess, because like.
Exactly. Where is the intellectual curiosity? If he is such an engineer, where's the intellectual curiosity? It's not there. He's there for a different purpose. He's there to get a talking point out of this guy. He's there to get a clip to try to re-emphasize whatever bullshit propaganda the Trump administration wants to push. All right, so with that, we're going to move on to the damning state of U.S. healthcare, a U.S. healthcare update, which is basically U.S. healthcare is out of control. And a whistleblower tells all in this damning insurance video.
A high-level
now, this expose is very hard to listen to, but it is important because it gives us an understanding of the state of our healthcare system in this great country.
Was bragging about, regardless of whether America stays a democracy or not, the insurance companies, specifically theirs, had a plan to continue to extract money from people. They're like a parasite that spreads, a zombie that can't quit eating. The top brass was making absolute moolah. They would want for nothing. Their great-grandchildren would want for nothing, even if they quit tomorrow. And the eye was on always expanding the company. There's no such thing as having enough. Even in a drastic scenario where for some reason our country just completely crumples in on itself, they're still going to be going after you.
Listen to this. They have a plan for this. And this is what I mean, that the elitists, the business owners at the very, very top of this society, they already know that the collapse is coming. They know that revolution is inevitable. They know that these things are cyclical and they happen. This is a cash grab at this moment. People are just trying to grab everything while they can before the system collapses because they know it's going to. Warren Buffett is... he was extremely frightened for a while. He was saying that you need to tax the rich more before the pitchforks start coming for us. They know. And we need to start being aware of this class consciousness. Okay?
I worked for one of America's largest subrogation law firms. When your insurance covers a cost for you, they can make somebody else responsible for repaying that amount. This is where insurance subrogation comes in. My job was to call people and harass them for money. We would hound you at best and harass you at worst. Many times I sat at my desk thinking, I am literally just a debt collector. Collectors were treating the people that they were calling as something to extract from, not seeing them as other humans. I saw a lot of abuse, verbal abuse, of course, not having any kind of empathy for anybody's lifestyles or situations. We had a system of notes that would show what was discussed with the claimant previously. So there was this lady that had a lot of notes in it, like, she's lying, she keeps giving a sob story. I spoke with this lady and was giving her the general spiel. And she cut me off and she said, I don't know why you guys keep calling me. I'm telling you, I'm on hospice. I'm dying. Like, I am in my sister's living room, in a medical bed. I am dying. Her sister got on and just, screaming, like, just please leave her alone. I didn't know what to do with myself because what do you say to somebody like that? It was Probably one of the lowest points of my life. I would see frequently people were bringing in like $30,000 a week. There's hundreds of people working for this company. There was a lady that worked there for 16 years. She was one of those top 5, and just thousands, tens of thousands of dollars were being brought in just by this one woman. We are incentivized to take the most amount of money from these people as possible. Without letting them know, we had full reign on adjusting what they would actually have to pay if they settled. We're paid on commission through a fee structure. So if they are making good faith payments, say $250 every 2 weeks or $250 a month, we would get 15 to 20% of that as a fee. If we were to settle a lower amount for them, we would get less in fees, and fees are what our commission is based on. The system was set up.
Yes, listen to that. So this system was set up that the workers in the employee class of the company are directly feeding off of each other's wealth from the other workers who are the consumers of the service, right? So instead of actually taking that from the massive amounts of gross amounts of money that the CEO takes in, right? Instead of taking it from his enormously gross profits and his personal salary, you have a system where the workers at that company, their commission, because they're not paid enough, obviously, nobody's paid enough in this country. Most people are underpaid, okay? Wages have been stagnant for 50 years compared to inflation. Most people are struggling. 60% of America's paycheck to paycheck. So it's a system where the workers at that company, their wages and in getting more money to put more food on their family's table is based on how much the people who are suffering under the consumer end, how much they have to pay. So think about how gross of a system that is. You're putting a value on somebody's suffering. It's fucking disgusting.
That if we showed any kind of humanity to these people, we were
incentivizing
it. And I can't tell you how many times I got in trouble for just trying to be a decent person.
So you can imagine that these companies, in order to be the executive at one of these companies, you have to be a fucking sociopath, okay? A goddamn fucking sociopath.
We are supposed to be doing this by the book. A lot of these cases, when people don't exchange their insurances at the time of the wreck because they're like, oh, it's fine, there's like barely a dent, my insurance will cover it. Later, when the insurance company hunts them down because they don't know that that person has insurance. That's why we're supposed to be getting their insurance. Like, that's the first thing we're supposed to check for with each call, because they might have insurance and not be on the hook for any of this. So a colleague saw me in the middle of a call, told me to pause the call, asked me what I was doing there, said I was not there for customer service. He pointed out the fact that I am poor. And he said, if I were you, I would focus on winning.
Wow. You see that? More incentivization to prey on the already suffering. And this worker is suffering themselves, okay? They're struggling to put food on their table. So they're incentivized to get more out of this poor person who's just looking for healthcare services. Oh my God, this is absolutely out of fucking control. Like, what the fuck?
And not on making sure that these people have insurance or not. You need to get money. You don't need to get their insurance. That was a part of the job description, things we were trained on. If they had insurance, we were supposed to collect the data on that. And when the people that have that responsibility to do their work correctly are in it just for the greed and are completely skipping out on certain steps, lives are needlessly ruined. We would.
Might I remind everybody that 68,000 people die unnecessarily every year in this country due to lack of access to basic healthcare services that other modern industrialized countries provide universally. And I'm not talking about terminally ill people. I'm talking about people who could have otherwise been alive today if they had access to those basic services and not had to go into enormous debt or had pressures like this. This is absolutely fucking ridiculous. We have healthcare refugees in America going to Canada for insulin.
Call you sometimes multiple times a week until we got the money. Just completely would not stop. I experienced one with a lady. It was a flood damage in the apartment downstairs. And the lady actually did have proof that it wasn't even her fault, but we were still pursuing her. And I tried to send it back to where we double check things. And they're like, no, she's guilty. And I'm like, no, look at the paperwork. She has clear proof that it was actually the apartment above her. And we were still calling that lady.
Wow. You know, this is very hard to listen to. I'm not going to finish this, but if you'd like to watch the full expose, it is linked in the guide, in the link I have in the description and the chat box. This is absolutely disgusting. So that was a Vice expose. Yeah, that's very hard to listen to. Especially when we are the wealthiest country on the planet. We should be able to provide universal health care and quality health care and set an example for the rest of the world. But that's absolutely out of control. That's ridiculous. Okay. We're going to start calling this the U.S. death care system, okay? I'm no longer calling it health care. I'm officially relabeling this system as death care. I'm giving it the true name. I'm ripping the mask off and showing you guys the real face by giving it this name. It is not health care. It is U.S. death care. So let's move on to the next insane video. Where a doctor gets a call from an insurance company asking if the patient's breast cancer procedure is necessary mid-surgery. This is ridiculous.
And when you watch videos like the one I'm about to show you, you start to think, hey, I'm not okay with cold-blooded murder, but this seems like cold-blooded murder. Here is a doctor describing
sick care, death care, something.
United Healthcare.
It's not health. It's not health care.
Trying to deny their hospital stay. I mean, you just literally cannot make this stuff up.
This guy, he's great. This is Status Quo News. I love this channel. He is on the ground actually talking to people instead of just listening to what the talking points are online. He's actually going to these strikes, going down and talking to the workers of Amazon and seeing what the frustrations are of these workers, why they're striking, and what the hell Amazon's doing to retaliate, like putting sewage in the public sidewalk area, destroying the sidewalk for not just the workers, but public as well, just to dissuade them from striking. Get that? And that, I digress a little bit here, but that's important for you to realize that this is a very good resource if you're interested in actually getting to the bottom of the situation and through all the bullshit. Status Quo is the news for you.
2025 and insurance just keeps getting worse. I just did 2 bilateral deeps and 2 bilateral.
Mike says, "Be right back." Same here. I'm gonna be right back, guys, but only for like 2 minutes.
Bilateral tissue expanders for patients, and I've never had this happen before, but during the second deep, I got a phone call into the operating room saying that United Healthcare wanted me to call them about one of the patients who was having surgery today, who was actually asleep having surgery, and said I had to call right now. So I scrubbed out of my case and I called United Healthcare, and the gentleman said he needed some information about her, want to know her diagnosis and whether her inpatient stay should be justified. And I was like, do you understand that she's asleep right now? And she has breast cancer. And the gentleman said, actually, I don't. That's a different department that would know that information. And I was like, well, she does need to stay overnight tonight. And you have all the information with you because I got approval for this surgery. And I need to go back and be with my patient now. But yeah, it's out of control. Insurance is out of control. I have no other words.
Some bean counter buffoon from United Healthcare is calling a doctor while the patient's in surgery, breast cancer. Why is it necessary for the patient to stay overnight? Why do we got to pay for that? The doctor says, do you know that this surgery is for breast cancer? Oh, no, that's from a different department. You understand why people hate these people? You understand why, in some extreme cases, they might want to perpetrate violence? Even though I'm not condoning violence, don't go get your guns and gun down CEOs. I've made it clear. Like, why doesn't United Healthcare, a billion-dollar company, why doesn't one department know what the other one's doing? Why do you have some dude calling a doctor not even knowing what the patient's surgery is for? You're calling to ask if it's medically necessary to stay overnight when you don't even have the information on what the hell this.
What do I always tell you guys? If you see a system that is unnecessarily more complicated than it should be, you should be immediately skeptical of a scam or a con. Okay, this is how pyramid schemes work.
The surgery is for? A doctor needs to be distracted and dealing with this bullshit? A lot of people, have, in some cases, misguided animosity towards the doctors. But the doctors, in many cases, are just as fed up as you. Since this story broke, I've been watching so many videos from great doctors talking about their disgust and frustration and with these health insurance companies and how they, in some cases, spend more time dealing with the health insurance companies than dealing with patient care. Here's one example. I mean, it's just beyond the pale that you're questioning whether a breast cancer patient mid-surgery needs to stay overnight. That's the kind of stuff, if Luigi Mangioni's defense has their head on straight, I assume they do, might come into play. Because if he is the shooter, you got to say alleged. I mean, then you got to make the trial about other things, and those other things would also be the United States health insurance industry. Real quick, I want to show you, this isn't necessarily like serious news, but I kind of got a chuckle over it. Sean Diddy Combs, Puff Daddy, who is in prison for allegedly being a serial predator, so that part is not funny. Apparently, he is throwing tantrums. He's in the same prison, apparently the same section as Luigi Mangione in Brooklyn. He's throwing tantrums over the attention Mangione is getting. Apparently, Mangione is on P. Diddy's hit list. Sean Diddy Combs is throwing tantrums about the attention fellow inmate Luigi Mangione has taken from him inside their notorious New York City lockup, and that may put the accused CEO killer on the disgraced rapper's shit list, a source told the Post Tuesday. When Combs was arrested on sex trafficking charges on September 16th, he was the most famous prisoner at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, but his reign was short-lived. After Mangione was arrested for allegedly gunning down United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson in early December, he was booked into the same facility as the 55-year-old music mogul. Since he arrived at MDC, Mangione, who is being held in protective custody, has become a sensation among other inmates. Mangione is reportedly receiving a hero's welcome on the inside, with other inmates expressing their own troubles with health insurance. Even the prisoners have stories. But that attention has apparently rankled Combs, who is housed in the general population of starstruck inmates. Quote, Diddy has been throwing tantrums over the fact that Luigi is getting all the attention in prison and is being revered as a hero after literally murdering someone on camera. A source told the Post, even in prison, Diddy's ego is bigger than life. Combs' reaction comes as no surprise to a former member of his inner circle. Quote, he always wants to be at the center of everything, the former insider told the Post. Quote, if he feels like anyone else takes his attention, he doesn't take it well. He gets pissed off. And if he has the power to do it, he makes the other person's life miserable. Combs is obviously facing decades behind bars. Combs and Mangione share the same legal team, but have never spoken to each other. Both men will remain at Metropolitan Detention Center for the foreseeable future. Quote, he's going to have Mangione on a shit list, says the Diddy insider. I don't think in terms of Luigi Mangione's priorities, being on P. Diddy shit list is one of them. But it has been reported that Mangione is being treated quite well in prison and has been elevated and I guess supported by the prisoners who, as that story revealed, many of them have their own personal stories with the health care system. One more thing I wanted to show you comes from an interview I did yesterday. Please watch it, about the tragedy of a father who lost his son, 22 years old, after his son went to pick up his routine asthma medication. His insurance was Optum. Optum is a subsidiary of United Health. And that insurance, that Advair, which is routine for asthma, which the son had gotten for a long time for $35, suddenly was over $500. Couldn't afford it, left without it. Days later, had a severe asthma attack. Days after the severe asthma attack, died. Here is the father, Bill, sharing the heartbreaking moment that he lost his son.
He did donate his organs. He didn't go the perfect way of donation, but he still helped 75 people with his organ donation, which is pretty nice and honorable, you know. But it allowed my wife and I, prior to the donation, to be with him in his last final moments. And you know, my wife, my son, and I were very close to the last second that he was alive. I had my head on his chest, holding his hand. To his very last breath. And that put a drive in me that where I'm at today. I mean, like, you want some motivation. You want some motivation. Your firstborn child is gone and you just felt his last breath. And that's what happened to me and my family.
Make no mistake, if P. Diddy takes out Luigi Mangione, he will be a martyr, and it will spark further rage from the working class that has already been enraged from this disgusting healthcare system alone. Just one aspect of the externalities, we call them, of capitalism as a whole, seeping into every aspect of your life, providing you a safety blanket of fake reassurance that you have freedom, but you are not free to choose where you work. You are not free to choose your employer. Your employer is free to choose the employee, but once you accumulate a job, you have no say what you do there. There's no democracy. There's no liberty. You are a slave. And you can they can get away with whatever they can legally, despite the law not having any indication of what is right and wrong regarding morals. Okay? Now, I like to remind people that there were laws in this country that absolutely should not have been followed, and that's regarding the suppression of votes. Remember, women and black individuals couldn't vote in this country for a long time, and that was very recent, regarding historical standards. So, you know, the law is no indication of what's right or wrong. And when you have laws benefiting the employer at the expense of working class conditions, it's it's a recipe for disaster. Okay, we don't have any freedom under capitalism. Capitalism was supposed to provide liberté, démocratie, and égalité, but it didn't. The French Revolution was successful in overthrowing the feudalist system, but the transition into the next system, while it served its purpose, it has since outlived its usefulness in terms of technological advancement. You can't say that that's a thing anymore because China has far outseated us in the electric vehicle. It's just ridiculous. It's a system that could cover its own bets for so long before it finally couldn't cover them anymore. So with that, we're going to go into the next section. California residents suddenly dropped by insurance before the catastrophic wildfires. This is more proof that making an industry for profit shifts the focus from providing quality service to fulfilling that need within fulfilling a need within society to, well, making profit.
The devastating situation with the fires that we're seeing around LA has been compounded for many people by the growing difficulty over the past few years to actually receive private insurance for your homes against that sort of fire. Last year, California's largest home insurer, that being State Farm, canceled thousands of policyholders' plans in areas across LA County, including in some of the areas that are being the hardest hit as we're broadcasting, Pacific Palisades, parts of Santa Monica, and other areas. In Pacific Palisades, nearly 70% of State Farm policyholders were dropped by the company beginning in July. And you can see on this chart the breakdown. Some of them not as bad. Pasadena also hit by fire at 7%, but Pacific Palisades in particular, the non-renewal percentage is very, very high. Now, that doesn't mean that these people can't get access to any insurance. There is sort of like the insurance of last resort, the fair access to insurance requirements plans are available. And you can see in this chart, the year-over-year growth of those plans has been very significant. In Santa Monica, more than doubling, very high percentage in Pacific Palisades as well. And so it sort of reminds me of previous reporting we've done of the difficulties in Florida, where a lot of insurers are pulling out. It's becoming more difficult to get flood insurance. We're sort of seeing a different elemental version of that here in California, which, the fires are particularly bad right now, but throughout the last few years, we've had these cyclical, really bad fires. And I know for a lot of people worried about what their recovery is going to look like, the concerns over insurance certainly don't help things. Alex, what do you make of this aspect of the story?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a huge part of the story that will only become a bigger part of the story in the days ahead. I mean, we've been in crisis mode just trying to get people out and make sure that people don't die. But the next stage is going to be, what do I do about my house that's burned down? And this insurance reform story is going to be a big part of it. I spoke yesterday with State Senator Ben Allen, who represents the area in the California Senate. And he said they already were having big debates about insurance in the legislature, and then this is going to probably change and shape that debate going forward. Part of the challenge has been, in California, as many of your viewers around the world know, we don't have enough housing. We didn't have enough housing before this, and now we're going to have a bunch of people that are homeless, and we're going to have to figure out where to build their homes when we know we haven't been able to build homes for the homeless people before. So that's.
And let me remind people again, it's not that they don't have enough housing built already. They have tons of housing in California, but they're all bought up and vacant. So a lot of foreign investors will buy property as investments and just keep them vacant and unavailable for people to use. And this is a serious problem, because that's infrastructure that we can use for a very real problem, and it's an easy solution, but we don't use them. There's so many empty and vacant properties because they're used as investment capital.
Another issue, but because we don't have enough housing, some of what we've done over the years is we've built housing in places where homes probably weren't supposed to be. You end up.
Again, if you want to watch the full video, you can do that. The link is in the description or the chat. I have all the links to the videos we're watching here are on the Red Pill series. The next one is a video that kind of resonates with me. Workers prepare to strike against greedy healthcare industry's profit conference. Okay? Now, remember, healthcare industries like United Health commit mass murder on a daily basis, which has been normalized for decades. People are finally starting to wake up, and they've had enough of this death industry. And this is just further proof that the internal contradictions are coming to the point where the people are starting to wake up and see beyond the veil that has been pulled over them.
That executive, Brian Thompson, and
With Status Quo, I am delighted to be joined by Steve Zeltzer. You're the chair with the United Front Committee for a Labor Party. And I wanted to talk to you because there is a pretty big conference in the Bay coming up, a healthcare conference, they're calling it, that JP Morgan is putting on. JP Morgan, infamously one.
So Elijah says they build the policies to force behaviors to ensure they line their own pockets and can form oligarchy. Yes, that is an apt description of what is happening. Y'all are paying attention. I love it.
One of the criminal corporations that tank the global economy. And all the big boys and gals will be there, including United Healthcare, Cigna, Aetna, although the list of, executives and players that will be there is not public. I wonder why. But I wanted to have you because your organization is organizing a protest outside this healthcare conference, which I think is important. Why don't you tell us first? I know you've been in this fight for a long time against the for-profit healthcare industry. What made you want to organize this protest, and why this conference in particular?
Well, we found out about it because the Hotel and Restaurant Workers Union, Local 2, had a long strike, in fact, 93 days. And a key issue in their strike was their union healthcare benefits. And the hotel companies, Hyatt, Hilton, and Marriott, wanted to take away their union-run health plan and put it under a private health plan run by some of these insurance companies. So as a result of that, the union...
Yeah, real quick in chat, Mike is a plethora of knowledge regarding that topic, but specifically we can't talk about that topic on YouTube, unfortunately. But yeah, Elijah, if you ever want to learn more about that stuff, Mike is a good resource to reach out to.
Union actually said that unless they got a contract and the strike was settled, they would be having mass picketing at this JP Morgan Healthcare Investors Conference. Now, this is the largest healthcare investors conference in the United States, in the world. There are over 8,000 corporate people that come, investors who want to make money off of healthcare. And at these conferences, they discuss how they can basically privatize and profit off of the developments in healthcare. For example, AI, the use of AI, how they can use that to increase their profits. And of course, we know that at United Healthcare, they used AI to kick people out of getting healthcare in nursing homes to increase their profits. People died as a result of that. So we felt that it would be important to have a United Front rally against basically capitalist control of the healthcare industry. And this is a good example of what's going on. The development of technology, development of healthcare for these companies to make more profits, not for people's needs. And we can see that with so many millions of people without healthcare or being denied healthcare, the question of taking it away control of the healthcare from these profiteers is critical for survival, really, of working people in this country.
And I want to read the description JP Morgan put out, which is kind of laughable. This premier conference is the largest and most informative healthcare investment symposium in the industry, which connects global industry leaders, emerging fast growth companies, innovative technology creators, and members of the investment community. It's a lot of neoliberal mumbo jumbo, but essentially, what it sounds like to me is this is a gathering to basically see what's working for them in terms of profit and come up with ideas to further squeeze American patients, seniors, but all people that are paying into this rotten system. It's interesting, Luigi Mangione, the alleged shooter of Brian Thompson, in his manifesto talked about, these parasites had it coming. Well, JP Morgan and these Wall Street banks are the ugly stepbrother and sister of United Health. Hasn't gotten as much attention, but these Wall Street firms are heavily invested in all of these companies. These Wall Street firms are very connected to what United Health is doing, which is, buying up the providers, buying up local hospitals, buying up AI. Can you kind of talk about it's not just symbolism that this is a JP Morgan conference, but Wall Street is very involved in this system?
Well, the takeover of healthcare from beginning to end is controlled by Wall Street. They're making determinations. The so-called nonprofits like Kaiser, HMOs, are also profiteering. Their executives make millions of dollars, and they also deny healthcare, or they limit healthcare benefits. For example, there's a strike going on right now in Los Angeles of mental health care workers, National Union of Healthcare Workers, and they have not been providing healthcare for mental illness. As a result, people commit suicide, and under federal law, they're supposed to provide these services. They're not doing it. They stall. They prevent you from getting appointments. Now, mental health, particularly, look at this fire that we're having now in Los Angeles. Stress, mental health, you need healthcare professionals, yet these companies, HMOs, which say that they're going to provide the healthcare, they don't. So
that is a damning point to make. As the externalities of capitalism and internal contradictions come to a breaking point within the working class is under so much pressure that we're going to see more mental health issues, and without any access to basic healthcare services, or very little access in a lot of cases, we are going to be a boiling pot for disaster.
The whole HMO, the whole healthcare system in the United States is molded around profiteering and making more money from healthcare. And that's why you don't see that on TV. For example, corporate TV is not covering this conference. They may cover it as a result of our rally that we're going to have, but they're not
John Gray, you were approached by a frenzied volt scientist who yells, "I'm gonna put my quantum harmonizer in your photonic resonance chamber." What's your response? A little Fallout reference. I love it. What's going on, John? Wow, that's funny.
Covering it because these same companies that television, the main corporate companies, are controlled by these companies. It's like workers' compensation is another whole area. Many workers get injured. They're targeted. They lose their jobs. They fight for their treatment. They're denied. If you don't get treatment and you get injured, you can become permanently disabled, which happens to large numbers of workers.
And that's another reason why jobs have the appearance of freedom while they don't actually under capitalism. Because if your healthcare is tied to your job, you don't have the freedom to quit. Okay? You are in a very precarious situation if you have to switch jobs, because your healthcare is tied to your job. So that's very scary, and that leads people to not want to leave their job and get comfortable with things that don't satisfy them or don't fulfill their skills in society. If you have skills in society, they're being wasted at a dead-end job. If your healthcare is tied to that job and you have no economic mobility. So now we move on to a little statistic that is even more damning as the cracks continue to grow within our economic system. Now, this is a poll recently done on college students by Generation Lab poll. Okay, so 50% view Luigi Mangione somewhat or extremely favorable. while 48% view Brian Thompson's killing as somewhat or totally justified. And this is the even more damning statistic. 81% view Brian Thompson somewhat or extremely negative. So this just proves that there's more evidence the workers in this country are fucking pissed. We're not going to watch the video on that one, but if you would like to view it, it is in the Red Pill series guide. Moving on to the next chapter, we're going to talk to you tonight about the MAGA Civil War. So Professor Wolf responds, Civil War inside MAGA.
Welcome, friends, to another Wolf Responds. I want to talk to you now about the Civil War beginning inside MAGA Trump land. It's a real fight between the two parts of the Republican Party. It's not a fight about principle. It's not a fight about fundamental issues. It's about who controls the decisions that Mr. Trump and his government are going to be making. It's a matter of power. So let's take a look at why there might be already, before he takes office, a basic war over power, a civil war inside MAGA Trump land. Let's begin with the money, because following the money is usually a pretty good way to understand American politics. It's all about the money. The Republican Party depends on the money of a very small number of very wealthy individuals, a very small number of big corporations, and relatively few very rich people. They provide the hundreds of millions, even now into the billions of dollars, funding the Republican Party. What does the party do with that money? Well, it does the obvious. The people who are billionaires and can give money, like Elon Musk, are few. They don't have many votes. They have a lot of money, but they don't have a lot of votes. Neither do the corporations. They have even more money and have very few votes. And the same is true of very rich individuals. So they give the party money, and they tell the party, use the money we give you to go out there and get the votes we need to put you into power so you can do for us, your funders, what we want you to do. And that's what the Republicans do. They take those millions, those billions, and they flood the airways with advertisements. They shake up the internet. They put ads everywhere. They hire people from every corner that they can get a hold of to go out and get votes from their parishes, get votes from their employees if they can get them to do it. They use the money, in short, to buy millions of people's votes. Sure, they promise those people something, just like they promise the big donors the big money. They promise the little people little things that they can do. A law that suggests white people are maybe better than the rest of us. Or maybe that there won't be abortions. Or maybe this or that. Whatever they think those in the masses want to hear, they'll pay the money to get the message to them. Vote Republican, and you'll be able to have that gun or 10 more like it, etc. You know all of this. You don't need me for that. And that's how the system works. And while I'm focused now on the Republican Party and the Civil War going on, the same kind of deal is the Democratic Party. They too have their big donors, their billionaires, the few corporations that support them, and they take that money and they go out and buy the massive votes they need. Only they buy them from union members, from minorities, from working people, the kind who support the Democratic Party. But it's a few donors buying a lot of votes on both sides. In that ways, these parties are similar. But now back to the Republicans. What's the Civil War about? Well, they want different things. The people at the top like immigration. They always have. They're the employer class. They like immigrants because you can pay them less for the same work. They like immigrants because if they don't do what you want, you terrorize them by threatening to inform the authorities, and they might lose their job or lose their citizenship or both.
Right. That's a damning point. And when you have a situation where you have undocumented illegal immigrants in a lot of these positions, they are the backbone of our agricultural industry in this country. So, and a lot of them are in a situation where they're too poor to have any kind of impact on the everyday situation that's going on with the 330 million richest in the country. So it's kind of like a distraction to put your problems on immigrants at this point. When they accumulate approximately 2% of the population, it's called scapegoating.
They are very pliant workers. If you bring them in on those HB1 visas and they don't keep the job or you fire them, they better go get that visa in a hurry or else they have to get out of the country. So they're not going to misbehave, are they? Not like a worker who is native born, doesn't have to worry about those issues. So the employers like immigration, but the mass of people have been persuaded over recent years to blame the deepening problems of American capitalism on immigrants. That's wrong. That makes no sense at all. It's what we used to call scapegoating. You can't do something about a problem, so you find someone to blame, focus everybody's upset on that scapegoat, do nothing about the problem, but relieve the pressure by having people demonize the scapegoat. It's far too familiar a part of American history and has been for many, many decades. So the Civil War pits those at the top who want immigration, who are going to demand, they want the freedom to employ the immigrant. But the mass of people were led to believe by Mr. Trump and his associates that not only would they blame immigrants, but to keep the masses happy, or to be honest, to keep the masses voting Republican, you got to do something. And so there was all that talk about deporting millions of immigrants. Well, here's the problem. The rich people who fund the Republican Party want immigrants, and the mass of people who provide the votes don't.
Oh, now you have another internal contradiction within one party of the dual party system we have that has already been controlled by one entity, that is capitalism. So, uh-oh.
At least the majorities of both do and don't. So what's the Republican Party going to do? It's torn apart inside. The funders don't want the party to do what the mass of voters want, and vice versa. So they both turned to Mr. Trump. Both sides turned to the people they put in power, one with the money, the other with the votes. And Mr. Trump, like most politicians caught in that kind of civil war, went with the money, because that's what they do most of the time. Follow the money, you figure out what's going on. I wish I could say something like this happens in the Republican Party, but not the Democrat. I can't say it, and I won't. They too are a party of big donors who give the party the money to buy the mass of people who vote Democratic. Can they end up on opposite sides and have a civil war? They can. They have.
And they are at the moment. If you pay attention, folks, there is another civil war going on inside the Democratic Party regarding progressive policies and more corporate centrist policies. So you need to pay attention to this, because that is yet another internal contradiction on top of all the other internal contradictions of our system. And it is reaching a threshold, and I'm afraid we might not be able to sustain it much longer.
They do, and they most likely will. But right now, in literally a couple of weeks before Mr. Trump takes office, we have an exploding civil war with money making the difference, because that's what it's all about.
I will be back in about 10 to 15 minutes, so enjoy the intermission.
Feel the pulse, divine sensation. Everyone needs just a little foundation. Feel the pulse, divine sensation. Everyone needs just a little salvation. Dreams arise, seeking out the morning light. majestic moments in cosmic flight. Holding on to the stars of starlight. There's a light within the dark waves, guided by echoes of ancient ways. Unified our reflection. With every there's a connection. Feel the pulse, divine sensation. Everyone feels the goodness of invitation. There's a light within the dark waves, guided by echoes of ancient ways. Unified our reflection. With every beat there's a connection. Feel the pulse, divine sensation.
I remember when we used to stand in the heart of the workers' plan. Obstacles weighed heavy on our backs, but unity's the strength they lack. Good friends we had and good friends we've lost, fighting battles at every cost. But through the struggle we raise our voice, in solidarity we made our choice. No union, no buy. No union, no buy. Hey little brother, don't you come by. No union, no buy. Our hands build the wealth they hold so tight, but together we reclaim our rights. No more silence, no more pain. In our unity, there's everything to gain. We lift each other, we won't back down. From city streets to every town, the power's in the people's hands. No union, no buy. We take a stand. No union, no buy. No union, no buy. Hey little sister, raise your flag high. No union, no buy. All the tables are turning, the fire inside is burning. For the workers and the buyers, we're igniting freedom's fires. No union, no buy. No union, no buy. Together we'll rise and we won't deny. No union, no buy. No union, I remember when we used to stand with hope and strength, hand in hand. The struggle's hard, but we'll survive. No union, no buy.
You got the skills, you've got the drive. But your boss won't help you thrive. You work so hard, you give your best, but they're keeping all the rest. You don't have to stand alone. Together we're stronger, set the tone. Fair pay, fair rules, a safe place too. It all begins with me and you. Organize, unionize, it's your right, don't compromise. Not treated fair, don't stand despair. Raise your voice, it's time to care. Together we rise, we win the prize, because a union means we're unified. When you stand as one, you've got the power. You can make big change in just an hour. It's not just talk, it's taking a stand for better pay and a helping hand. It's not about fighting, it's about what's fair. Sharing the value of what's made there. If the boss says no, don't be afraid. Together we've got the tools to trade. Organize, unionize, it's your right, don't compromise. Not treated fair, don't stand despair. Raise your voice, it's time to care. Together we rise, we win the prize, because a union means we're unified. No more later, no more wait. To change the rules, create our fate. It's not just you, it's all of us. In solidarity we build the trust. Organize, unionize, it's your right, don't compromise. Not treated fair, don't stand despair. Raise your voice, it's time to care. Together we rise, we win the prize, because a union means we're unified. As a union means we're unified. The unified, the unified. Your voice matters, your work matters. Together we can make it better.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Red Pill series. I'm your host, the Benefactor, and we're going to go back into the next chapter of our series here, why billionaires should be illegal. And again, I always emphasize, I'm not arguing against you getting rich. I'm not arguing against anyone getting rich. I'm arguing against the concentration of wealth that has accumulated to the point where about 10 individuals own more wealth than the bottom half of the population of this planet. So I'm talking about wealth that is so massive that you can't spend it in multiple lifetimes, even if you tried. And specifically wealth that is hoarded outside of the realm of being introduced into the economy. As you know, a healthy economy is one where most of the wealth is not hoarded in the Cayman Islands, but allowed access and flowing freely through the economic system from one hand to the next. So with that, we're going to jump into a video that argues why billionaires should be illegal. And I think there should be a maximum wage along with a minimum wage. This is an interesting video, though. We're going to go into this. Let me open up the video. Yeah.
This is a...
We're going to put this on a higher speed. And we're not going to watch the whole thing again. If you want to watch the whole thing, the link is in the description. Or I put it in chat. I'll probably put it in chat again for you guys.
Headquarters of H&M, the company that has produced this shirt that I'm wearing, but that has also produced Sweden's richest man, Stefan Persson. Here's how rich Stefan Persson is. If a salesperson at an H&M store would save every penny of her salary, it would still take her over 500,000 years to save up as much money as Stefan Persson has today. And if you think that's a lot of money, wait until you hear about Elon Musk. So Elon, currently the world's richest man, has as much wealth as 11 Stefan Perssons. With his money, Elon could fund 8 Manhattan projects, or he could pay for an army of 100,000 top-level Blackwater mercenary soldiers for a period of 10 years. Or he could fund the complete operations of the United Nations for more than 14 years. Can a person become too rich? So rich that the wealth starts to become a threat to society? If so, shouldn't we put a limit on how much wealth any one person can have? And what should, in that case, that limit be? So if I ask you this question, how much money is enough for you? How much money do you need to have in your bank account to fully flourish in life? $100,000? $1 million? $10 million? Or do you believe that it's impossible to have enough? Like the American billionaire John D. Rockefeller, who when journalists asked him how much money is enough, famously replied, just a little bit more. It turns out that many researchers have asked people this question, how much they believe is enough. And what these studies show very clearly is that almost everyone agrees that there is an enough line, a line where people believe that more money won't make a big difference, a line where once reached, people think that they have enough money to fully flourish. Exactly where people draw the enough line depends a little bit on where in the world researchers ask. So in the Netherlands, people say that $1 million is enough. In the US, people say that $5 million is enough. To me, the most interesting takeaway from these fascinating studies isn't the exact level of the enough line. Instead, what I find the most interesting is that most people do not agree with Rockefeller that there is no limit at all. Almost everyone agrees that.
Because that is a sociopathic notion. Okay, it is the notion of a sociopath to believe that you want to accumulate more wealth over exponential growth. Okay, that is just narcissistic and greed.
At some point, enough is enough. Another interesting thing to note is that even in rich countries like Sweden, where I live, most people will, in reality, never.
Stephen, that's a very good budget. That's a very decent budget. I mean, most people, like depending on where you look in this country, require at least anywhere from $12 to $20, I believe is the statistic, for just their basic needs to be taken care of every day. So the fact that you spend only $35 a day is a very good budgeting system, and hats off to you at all the sacrifices you make as a worker, in terms of your work-life balance and all that. I completely understand.
Get anywhere near these enough lines. So in Sweden, the median wealth per adult is $78,000. In the United States, it's $108,000, and in the UK, it's $152,000. And in the world overall, the median wealth is just $9,197. So what people actually have.
One thing I didn't mention is that statistic I was referring to was from years ago, so that could have risen with the inflation that we've seen over the last, 5 or 6 years. So that very well could have risen to beyond that statistic, and in that regard, $35 is essential. That's you're living off the most basics there.
Have is very far even from the modest Dutch enough line. Another interesting takeaway is that the super rich today have so much more money than what we've been talking about so far that is just mind-blowing. So 243,000 people in the world are what economists call UHNs, ultra high net worth individuals, which means that they have more than $50 million. Of those, around 7,000 have more than $500 million. And then we still haven't even gotten to the billionaires. Stefan Persson, who I talked about in the beginning, has around $20 billion. And Bill Gates, he has around 128 billion. And Elon, he has 220 billion. So the super duper rich today, they aren't a little richer than the rest of us. They are truly astronomically richer than the rest of us. But so what? Is there a problem that a few people have these extreme levels of wealth? Well, yes, there is a problem with extreme wealth. In fact, there are several problems. There's a popular narrative among the rich today that tells this story. In the past, everyone except for the king was poor and miserable, but today, thanks to global capitalism, most of us are rich and poverty is about to be eradicated. This narrative is illustrated by a popular infographic that Bill Gates, one of the world's richest men, has called one of his favorite infographics. This infographic shows how in the year 1820, around 90% of the world's population lived in extreme poverty. And then over the following 200 years, this share has fallen to only 10% in 2015. And it's easy to understand why billionaires like Bill Gates like this graph, because in this remarkable graph, it looks like poverty is just vanishing almost on its own. And if that's true, then we can maintain the economic system we have. There's no need to look critically at extreme wealth concentration. But there are many researchers, for example the economic anthropologist Jason Hickel and the economist Ha-Joon Chang, who argue that this narrative that poverty is just about to be eradicated is misleading. These researchers point out that we don't have any accurate information about global poverty from before the year 1981, so instead graphs like these make tenuous assumptions about people's incomes rather than their actual needs, with the result that we overestimate how poor people were in the past and we vastly underestimate how poor many people are today. So despite what the dominant narrative says, in absolute numbers, there is arguably more poverty in the world today than ever before. And to me, that is the first problem of extreme wealth. Extreme wealth just cannot be morally justified when that wealth could be used to alleviate extreme poverty. This is late billionaire David Koch. Even though he has never been elected, David, together with his brother Charles, did more to shape American politics than few others. Over the years, they've donated and raised billions of dollars to climate denial organizations, gun rights groups, and the Tea Party movement that arguably paved the way for Donald Trump. This is the billionaire and media mogul Rupert Murdoch. Through his media outlets like the News of the World in the UK and Fox News in the US, Rupert was instrumental in getting Britain to vote for Brexit and the US to vote for Donald Trump. This is Elon Musk, the richest person in the world. So in 2022, he bought one of the world's largest social media platforms, Twitter, so that he can use it for his own political agenda. Something that is key to both democracy and capitalism is the concept of decentralization. In contrast with regimes like the Soviet Union, Nazi Germany and North Korea, where the power and the economy was centralized under dictatorial rule and where a ruling class controlled resources and suppressed political dissent, our democratic and capitalistic system relies on the decentralized principles of one person, one vote, and a free market. But extreme wealth undermines the principle of decentralization, and it threatens both democracy and capitalism, because as the Koch brothers, Rupert Murdoch's and Elon Musk's actions show, extreme wealth can easily be translated into political power and also into market power. And as Martin Gielands explains in his book Affluence and Influence, research shows that over the last few decades, policy outcomes almost always favor the richest. To take just one almost mundane example, in the 1990s, the Swedish government gave the Swedish H&M billionaire Stefan Persson a tailor-made tax break that saved him millions and millions of dollars. If you want to learn how the rich are using their power to rig the tax system, check out my previous video where I use Lego figures to explain how that works.
That would be very interesting to get into. We're only going to watch the end of this chapter here. I'm not going to complete the full video, but it is touching on some important topics here regarding why billionaires should be illegal. And this is the Market Exit YouTube channel. So I suggest you subscribe to them. And the full video link is in the description, and I'll probably put it in the chat after this chapter.
With extreme wealth, we also get extreme inequality, and there is a growing body of research showing that inequality in itself creates social problems. As inequality increases, so does crime, child bullying, mental health problems, teenage pregnancies, corruption, the list goes on. And if you want to learn more about how inequality in itself creates social problems, check out my previous video, Why Inequality Matters, more than you think. So extreme wealth maintains extreme poverty, undermines democracy, and it creates extreme inequality, which is ruining our societies. So is there anything we can do about extreme wealth? Before we get to the next chapter,
so that question holds. Is there anything that you think we can do about this extreme accumulation of wealth by a small group of people at the top of society? Put it in the chat and I will read it in a minute. I'm going to put the link for the guide again in the chat for you guys. Steven says, thank you, Ben. I get by. Much love, bud. Yes, much love. We all have to stick together in these hard times, and recognize that we are all in this together. Despite our differences of opinion, we are all in this together. So with that, I'm going to move down to the brutal takedown of Trump by MP from Canada's Green Party. Okay, so Trump suggested that Wayne Gretzky should be Canada's prime minister, but a Green Party MP clapped back, schooling him on how Canada's system works. You can't just buy your way into being the prime minister like in America, Mr. Trump. You have to actually be a member of parliament first. Ouch! So let's watch him get schooled.
I would like to report a murder. Hello, everybody. David Schuster here. Elizabeth May, Canadian Member of Parliament, leader of the Green Party, just delivered one of the most brutal takedowns of Donald Trump you will ever see. The bloodletting happened during a news conference broadcast.
So Elijah makes a good point. Master 0-point energy, gravity control, and elemental transmutation, and their dollars become irrelevant. Yes, as we discover more and more ways to tap into the 0-point energy field, we can essentially alleviate our oppression from the instruments of higher society and our economic system. So that is very important. Free energy will allow us to have self-sustaining communities, free from internal contradictions. Like a plasmoid has no internal contradictions that lead to instability. We have to also look at that for social structures in the social sciences as well. You know, we want our society to exist without any internal contradictions so that can be self-sustaining. Right? That's the theory, at least, behind it. And we know that it's possible in mechanical systems. Why shouldn't it be possible in social constructs as well? There's no evidence to believe that. I don't lead me to believe that it's not possible personally. But yeah, definitely a good point. You touch a lot of you touch on a lot of important aspects of what I do here. Yes, good idea.
On CPAC, Canada's version of C-SPAN in the United States.
Newsflash, Donald Trump, we are not aspiring to be a 51st state. We are already a sovereign country. We are a nation. And anytime anyone looks around the world for the top 10 places to live, Canada's in the top half.
I love this lady. She's awesome.
Always. The United States? Never. Even the U.S. News and World Report, which puts together such a list, looks at things like affordability, access to health care, safe streets. Where do you want to live? Canada.
I remember Michael Moore did a scene in one of his documentaries just proving how safe Canada was. And he's got some balls for doing this, but he basically just walked into people's houses to see how many houses in each neighborhood left, how many people left their house unlocked. And that's just, you know, like you feel safe when you leave your house unlocked. Okay. So, yeah, that's actually, you know, something that's kind of relevant here.
It was just getting started. She brought up Donald Trump's recent social media post where he wrote, "Oh, Canada," with this AI-generated triumphant photo.
No matter how many Trump photos of him in business suits striding a Swiss mountain he posts with a Canadian flag, we're not intimidated.
Yes, that is the Matterhorn in Switzerland.
People who know Trump in business deals say this is his tactic before negotiation. Humiliation, business approach. Okay, so I take offense. We do not strive to be the 51st state. We're a G7 country. We are part of the world as an independent, sovereign nation. Comme Canada, nous sommes déjà une nation fière.
When May went back to
Viva la
English, she
resistance.
addressed Trump's recent suggestions about who in Canada should try to become the next Canadian Prime Minister.
I have so many great friends. One of them is the great one, Wayne Gretzky. I said, run for Prime Minister, you'll win it'll take 2 seconds.
Wayne Gretzky? I mean, he's great. He is the great one. He skates to where the puck is going. It's not going to MAGA. The puck is on a Canadian ice rink. And by the way, Mr. Trump, please, before making public pronouncements that Wayne Gretzky should run for Prime Minister, give yourself or get yourself a briefing on the nature of parliamentary democracy, a Westminster parliamentary system, and a constitutional monarchy where no one runs for Prime Minister. We have elections for members of parliament. We don't get to pick and choose among our billionaire friends for who gets a seat at the cabinet table. If they're not an elected member of parliament, well, Canadian system is different from that of the United States of America. I suggest that Mr. Trump find one of his grandchildren's school books and look at the year 1776, which may explain a few things to him about why our systems have.
So yeah, Trump's not interested in educating himself, obviously. He's not an intellectual by any means. He's a con man. He'd rather pay somebody to get good grades for him, which he probably did. So the whole country of hold on one second, I lost my place here. Yeah, a whole country trolls Don Jr. So let's watch this failure too, because
for many Americans,
as the system collapses, you will see tomfoolery and nonsense, specifically because the system needs to ensure the conditions of its own existence, but the internal contradictions are just too much. So as a result, you have a party that's feigning working class, solutions, while not really having anything to back it up. As a result, you have a lot of distraction and nonsense.
Specifically Trump supporters, socialism is the worst thing that they can imagine. But imperialism, apparently they're totally fine with it. Don Jr., along with Charlie Kirk, of all people, recently took a trip to Greenland as part of a PR move to show Americans that Greenlanders really love the United States, so much so that they want to be a part of it.
It needs security for itself, but it also needs security very much for the world. The location really, you see the people and the ships sailing around, and they're not the right ships, and they're not the ships you want to know about. So we need security, and our country needs it, and the whole world needs it.
Yes.
So strategically located.
Yeah.
You're right.
You guys like that, right?
Pictures from the trip showed Greenlanders smiling with the pair, sporting red MAGA hats. Why would they have those red MAGA hats in the first place? That is a great question. Here's a post from Ron Filipkowski on X showing Don Jr. posing with MAGA Greenlanders holding an American flag. According to Danish reporting, many of the people wearing MAGA hats in Don Jr. and Charlie Kirk's Greenland videos were homeless rounded up from the area, including one man they found under a bridge to come into the restaurant for a photo op and a free meal. Others have confirmed that the visit and the photos that emerged from it were staged, including a Greenlandic MP, Pipaluk Ling. She mentioned that locals were flipping off Jr. and Kirk and that they were posting messages on social media saying, "Yankee, go home." She also said no journalists were allowed to interview him. It was all staged to make it seem like we, the Greenlandic people, were MAGA and love to be a part of the USA. Local media also confirmed that those crisp red MAGA hats were distributed to people.
So this is part of the propaganda. You have Trump going up there and saying, none of my products are made in China, and literally all of them are made in China.
Prior to the photo shoot. Kirk left that part out when he claimed that he and the president-elect's son were met by hundreds of people in MAGA hats in the streets of Nuuk, people that love America, that want to be a part of America. But Ling says that Greenlanders are hardly interested in becoming a part of the United States. She told Politico, "We know how they treat the Inuit in Alaska. Make that great before trying to invade us." I can't imagine what it must be like for Greenlanders to see two American white dudes, particularly these two American dudes, trying to actively colonize them in 2025. And Ling was right to bring up the way the Americans have treated the indigenous peoples of the lands that they've conquered in the past. To this day, the Native American population in our country, what's left of them, are underrepresented in government. They've been relegated to reservations that keep getting smaller and smaller in size over the years. They have less economic and political opportunity than most, and they have rampant health concerns that are more pronounced within their communities than others. The native Alaskans of today have some of the highest rates of alcoholism and diabetes in the country. Similar statements can be made about the natives of both Hawaii and Guam. And make no mistake, Trump's interest in Greenland is no different from the colonizers of centuries past interests in places like India, Southeast Asia, and China, the Caribbean, all of the Americas, and all of Africa. And imperialism never went away over the years. Many European countries still have holdings abroad. The US certainly does, not to mention we stick a military base anywhere we're able. But aside from that, we are capitalists, aren't we? Capitalism is very imperialistic in the sense that it encourages the acquisition of properties in order to acquire the assets that come with those properties. Entrepreneurship 101, the initial goal is to build and run a business, yes, but the bigger and more aspirational goal is to build up a business just enough that a bigger business acquires it. You sell your business so you make money from the sale, but the bigger business that acquired you no longer has to worry about any competitive threats that your business may have posed. They'll get to acquire a full...
That's exactly how Goobagoo worked. I worked at a chat agency called Goobagoo, owned by a man named Brad Title, and he worked us like basically slaves. He's a disgusting piece of shit, and he basically did all of that to acquire enough wealth and make the business successful enough to be acquired by a huge company called Reynolds & Reynolds, who then cut our benefits even further. So fuck you, Brad Title. You can go suck a big fat dick.
Fully developed and functioning infrastructure, and they'll get to profit from economies of scale. Once the acquisition happens, though, you are out of the picture. You have no further say in the mission of the business, let alone the legacy of it. You have no control over how the workers are treated. If you're lucky, they keep you on as a board member or something like that, but often it's just an ornamental position. The ones doing the acquiring, though, those are the real kings of capital. They're the real winners of this insane system that only ever values or recognizes upward movement, bigger and better. So these companies just acquire and acquire company after company, gobbling up competitors, eliminating laissez-faire checks and balances that would otherwise be imposed on their business. Now they use their immense wealth to purchase political influence within governments, and the governments support whatever these companies want because business is business and business is good, the bigger the better. Imperialism is the exact same thing, but just with physical land. Nations are acquired instead of small businesses. Entire cultures are swallowed up within the empire. Natural resources are exploited to serve the empire, the profits of which are hardly given back to the land that they came from. The people, who may have once benefited from a smaller governing zone, become overlooked by an empire that doesn't have the time, energy, or interest to take care of them. The people don't matter. The people weren't the motive. The people only matter as much as they can help to extract whatever resource the empire was actually after. Trump has never said why he wanted to acquire Greenland, but there are two leading theories. The first is that he wants the abundance of natural resources that lie beneath Greenland's ice sheet. Most likely, he wants it because Elon Musk wants it. The other theory is that he's working in cahoots with Russia, and Russia wants Greenland so that they can have easier access to Western Europe. But while Trump has never said why he wants what he wants,
I don't really buy the whole Trump-Russia collusion theory. I'm more inclined to believe that Elon put that in his ear, because Elon is, again, another billionaire motivated by his own self-interest. We have two big dicks swinging now, and again, in a battle of ego, the loser always wins. So with that, we're going to jump into the next chapter. Democrats are also corrupt under capitalism, and we have to remember that. There is an establishment group within our Democratic Party. Now, there has been, in recent years, a break in that party, specifically with the introduction of people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who don't take corporate PAC money and have more progressive left-wing ideas rather than centrist and overall right-wing economic ideas that the mainstream establishment Democrats have. So with that, you can actually see, I don't have it in here, but we will watch the video of this right-wing shift play out. It happened during the 1990s, when the Democrats started taking more and more corporate PAC money to compete with the Republicans. And as that happened, we saw a noticeable shift in their economic policies. And this plays out in the video I have on my channel of Nancy Pelosi, originally with her origins of her political career started from a more progressive stance, and she was for universal health care, and now she's been more of a advocate of the right-wing section of the economic stance, specifically knocking down those more progressive policies in the Congress. So that is very, very important to see that there is a shift there that's happening. And it's you know, the singer, I forget his name, of Rage Against the Machine, he called it a meat grinder. The system is a meat grinder. You might go in with ideals, but at the end of the day, the pressures and the influences at bay are going to grind you into corporate meat. Give me 1 second. I didn't prepare this, but I want to show it to you guys real quick.
May not. Thank you very much, Congressman McDermott, for holding this press conference and for your leadership on a single-payer proposal. I remain a staunch and ardent supporter of the McDermott-Conyers bill. I am very pleased with the president.
So this is Nancy Pelosi in 1993 at the beginning of her political career advocating for a bill on universal health care. This is not an advocate, or this is not advocating for a single-payer system or a half measure that doesn't cover everybody. This is a policy that would be universally applied.
Presentation last night. I'm sure others this morning have told you that he made an excellent diagnosis of the problem, and now we have to get on with how we take care of providing health care to all Americans. My problem with the president's proposal, if there is a problem, is that one of the principles of universal access, one of the principles of the single-payer bill is universal access. The president has accepted some of the principles of the McDermott legislation, be it universal access, no precondition, portability, you know, the list goes on and on. But for access to be universal, it must be affordable. And my concern is that at 150% of poverty, a family would have to start paying for its 20% share of the insurance, may not make it affordable to many of the families whose needs it hopes to address. There is already a concession on part of the federal government that a family needs food stamps if they're at 185% of the poverty level. If we admit that people cannot feed their families at below 185% of poverty, how then can we expect them to pay for access to insurance at 150% of poverty? I think the president is on the right track. I think the closer he moves toward the single payer, the better. As I've said before, I hope that this plan, and when I say hope, I mean that I will join with my colleagues here in working to see that the plan that the Congress passes contains as many of the provisions of single payer. Once again, I want to commend Mr. McDermott and Mr. Conyers for their reasons of security, reasons of savings that spring also from the simplicity of the program, savings which spring from early intervention, people seeking and receiving health care earlier in the game so that they don't have more costly health care and hospital stays. Everything points to Mr. McDermott's bill. It is interesting to see how under scrutiny, when people really take the look at these bills, how brilliantly the single-payer plan stands out. And I think it's a tribute to Mr. McDermott's endurance that he has kept this issue alive, and others did not think it was so, shall we say, inevitable. In any event, I hope that the committee, I join my colleagues in requesting from the committee the opportunity for this bill to be considered.
Now, we juxtapose that between what we have today.
But we're not here to, in any way deep six the Democratic Party. I think Joe Biden is the new brand for the Democrats, which is really good because he appealed in Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. So he helps us address some of those concerns that we've had.
Is there anyone you know of who will be challenging her in a legitimate challenge come tomorrow for the speakership?
Not that I heard of. So the real choice is between Nancy Pelosi and Kevin McCarthy. And, you know, Nancy Pelosi, in her defense, has protected us from some of the more liberal ideas in our party.
Has protected us from some of the more liberal ideas of the party, and i.e. more progressive, more worker-oriented. Okay, so this next video is the biggest government is titled "The Biggest Government Cover-Up Hidden in Plain Sight." So Democrats are also corrupt under capitalism. Don't get me wrong, there's plenty of blame to go on both sides of the aisle here. And here's just another example of how corporate Democrats are just as corrupt in some cases as the Republicans. This is what I mean by two sides of the same corrupt coin. They are bought and paid for by the same corporations that spend millions to lobby for control over the government. While the Flint, Michigan water crisis is still ongoing 11 years later, remember it started in April 2014, Status Quo News reveals evidence the Democratic Attorney General has been covering up this crisis. 11 years, and the public water is still contaminated with lead.
The department will conduct another search for records or records under your above quoted description. To be clear, folks, I've been an investigative journalist now for over a decade. I have never, ever asked for documents, a government tell me they don't have them, and then all of a sudden, unprompted, reach out to me. Oh, we'll look again. That just this August, so thank you. Care less about. I'm gonna detail those for you too, because I think the Democratic Attorney General of Michigan is covering up the massive financial fraud that poisoned an American city. And 10 years later, contrary to what you've been told, the water is still toxic in Flint. I was just there recently. People were showing me their rashes on their skin from the water recently. People still post on social media images of brown and dirty water in Flint. Cancer is surging in Flint as a result of people drinking and bathing in that toxic water for years. And all criminal charges have been dropped. So this is an ongoing crisis and an ongoing cover-up. And I believe there's a scandal that the Democratic Attorney General of Michigan is trying to cover up. Before I give you the new details, I need to inform a lot of you new subscribers of my reporting on this so you kind of have the background. In 2022 for The Guardian, I broke a major story about a major RICO case, racketeering case, that was about to be charged by the original Flint water criminal investigators. These were investigators and prosecutors who were investigating the case from 2016 to 2018. So we're talking many years ago, before they were fired by the current Democratic Attorney General. I'll read you some of this. A team of prosecutors and investigators leading the investigation into the Flint water crisis from 2016 through 2018 were assembling a racketeering case against the architects of a bond deal that residents and experts say sparked the health disaster. Sources familiar with the criminal investigation told The Guardian, i.e. me. The case, which would have come under the RICO, Racketeer, Influenced, and Corrupt Organizations laws, often used to charge organized crime groups, i.e. the mafia, was widespread and sent to implicate additional state officials who played a role in the poisoning of Flint, according to these sources. But when the team was suddenly broken up and their investigation restarted with a new set of investigators, the RICO case never materialized. What happened? Critics point to Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel. So you had prosecutors and investigators moving forward a massive financial case over fraud that involved Wall Street banks poisoning an American city through their greed and fraudulent financial schemes. More on that in a minute. They're about to charge. Suddenly, Dana Nessel is elected Attorney General of Michigan. She comes in. She fires everyone. She cleans house of the special prosecutor, the chief investigator, who, by the way, used to run the Detroit FBI office. He helped bring down the Gambino crime family in New York. Pretty serious guy, pretty accomplished. She fires him and most of the team. And she doesn't follow through on the massive financial charges that they were about to charge. Why? Nobody knows. Well, read on. Listen on. Okay. Well, as part of that report that I did in The Guardian, I also reported what would have happened if the RICO case came, if those financial charges were actually brought. well, the state of Michigan and their friends on Wall Street wouldn't have been pretty. Multiple sources familiar with the investigation noted that if the financial fraud or RICO charges had been filed, the state of Michigan might have faced hundreds of millions of dollars in liability over the KWA bond deal. Why would the state of Michigan face hundreds of millions of dollars in liability? Because essentially there was a fraudulent financial deal that allowed Flint, a nearly bankrupt city, in 2013 and 2014, to borrow $100 million to join and help finance a completely unnecessary privatized new water pipeline. And while that new water pipeline was being built, which would take 2 years, the geniuses in Michigan and the then governor's office decided, hey, we'll just have Flint use the Flint River, which had been polluted and contaminated for over 100 years by General Motors, Dow Chemical, DuPont, and all the corporate criminals. And on top of using the polluted river, we'll use the Flint water plant, which was essentially one of these Boeing planes falling apart midair. It didn't even have the proper equipment to safely treat the water. So because the state of Michigan, the Attorney General's office specifically signed off on this fraudulent financial deal that allowed Flint to join this new water system, which then triggered using the Flint River, investors in this new water system could sue the state of Michigan potentially for hundreds of millions of dollars for bond fraud. Well, state of Michigan, I was told by several sources, a state could go bankrupt if they're sued and lose hundreds of millions of dollars, because unlike the federal government, they can't just.
Yeah, that's an even worse solution, Mike, right? They're switching to PVC. If that's true, that the plastic is that's not good for you either, I don't believe. So I try not to even microwave plastic, even if it says it's microwavable. I don't, because just plastic in and of itself, if it's heated up in the sun, will seep, toxins. I forget which chemical it excretes, but it's not healthy for you,
Just print money out of their behinds. But it wasn't just the state of Michigan that was details when it went public. Also, our friends on Wall Street, JP Morgan Chase and Wells Fargo, who along with a third financial firm underwrote the KWA bond deal, could have also faced similar financial penalties for failing to do their due diligence as outlined in the administrative order that preceded the bond deal to ensure that the necessary upgrades to Flint's water plant were completed so that the plant could safely treat Flint River. Translated in English, JP Morgan and Wells Fargo, they issued the bonds that allowed for the funding of this new water system that Flint was going to join. As part of that bond deal, they were supposed to make sure that the Flint water plant was equipped to treat the Flint River water that Flint would be using temporarily while this unnecessary new privatized water system was being built. Obviously, they did not do their due diligence to make sure that the Flint water plant could safely treat the Flint River water. And the rest is history. As I told you, people were poisoned. And 10 years later, it's an ongoing crisis. People are still sick and developing cancer at alarming rates. Okay, what's new here? Well, after the Attorney General of Michigan, Dana Nessel, so badly, excuse my French, fucked up the Flint water criminal case to the point where the state of Michigan Supreme Court in 2023 threw out all her charges, she was forced to end the investigation. So I found out that there were specific documents that they had continually been denying me. I kept putting in, as a journalist, you could put in freedom of information requests. I kept putting in freedom of information requests for documents pertaining to that racketeering case, that RICO case that the original prosecutors that the current attorney general fired, got rid of, conveniently, right when they were going to charge this massive financial scheme, right when they were bringing down the hammer on the politicians and others that basically scammed Flint and poisoned them as a result. She fired all of them right before they could do that. Interesting. But she kept denying me freedom of information requests for those documents, citing an ongoing investigation. So after the investigation was over, because the Supreme Court threw out her charges and the statute of limitations had ended, so essentially she could no longer charge people because so much time had passed, I put in freedom of information requests, again, for specific documents, particularly a 52-page memo from the original prosecutors she fired, basically outlining the RICO case they had built, that financial case, and the charges they were going to bring and who they were going after. Because obviously it's important to know who was behind this financial scam, what were the details, and how did it poison Flint? We need to know what happened in Flint so we can prevent it happening elsewhere. Okay, well, it was quite the evolving response from the Attorney General's Office of Michigan. On March 27th, I get a response to my freedom of information request from the Attorney General's office. After a search for our records, to the best of the department's knowledge, information, and belief, the department does not possess the records under the description given in your request or by another description. Huh. The Attorney General's office tells me they don't have the documents that I requested. again, this is a memo out from the original prosecution team that she fired that they created and delivered to her. I happen to have known this Attorney General's office received this briefing, which again outlines the whole Megillah: fraud, scam, con. They tell me they don't have them. Okay. On April 19th, I responded. Before I take any further action, hint, hint, I wanted to follow up one more time. Is the AG's office positioned firmly that they do not possess this document? And I outlined the document. Prosecution Memorandum Racketeering Enterprise, dated December 2018 and prepared by Special Agent Ron Reddy. So I basically, called their bluff. Sure you don't have it? Before I take further action, because I was reaching out to attorneys to potentially sue them for the documents. The people of Flint deserve.
This is why I love Status Quo News. This guy is an amazing investigative journalist.
To know the truth. The American people deserve to know the truth. Interestingly enough, on May 6th, so several weeks later, it just so happens after I went to Flint to cover the 10-year anniversary of the ongoing water crisis and the ongoing cover-up, after I went there, after I did an online show basically threatening to sue them, unprompted, the Attorney General's office responded to me, stating, in its March 27, 2024 written notice, the department informed you that the department does not possess records under the description given in your request or by another description. For your appeal, hold on that, appeal for a second, you state, I wanted to follow up one more time, and they write what I wrote to them. The department will conduct another search for records or records under your above quoted description. To that end, it is necessary to extend the time for the response. So, to be clear, folks, I've been an investigative journalist now for over a decade. I've done a lot of freedom of information requests. I have never, ever asked for documents, a government tell me they don't have them, and then all of a sudden, unprompted, reach out to me, oh, we'll look again. That just doesn't happen. And I asked a couple other journalists who said they've never had that. So what prompted all of a sudden that, oh, we'll look again. Maybe they're under the pillow, the documents that you're asking for. I did threaten to sue them. Maybe they thought that would get attention, and maybe they don't want attention on this. I digress. Then on May 28th, after they originally told me they don't have the documents, then they suddenly, out of nowhere, oh, we'll look again. On May 28th, all of a sudden, they found the documents, but they won't give them to me. The department has determined that a document titled Prosecution Memorandum Racketeering Enterprise is currently exempt from public disclosure under section blah, 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 blah. The exemption provides for the non-disclosure of, quote, information or records subject to privilege recognized by statute or court rule. Essentially, they gave me a bunch of legal jargon to why they won't give me the documents that they originally said they didn't have in their possession. So, first outreach, we don't have the documents. I call their bluff. Suddenly they see Jesus. We'll look again. Then, voila, we found the documents. By the way, these are not thousands of documents. We're talking about a 52-page memo where I gave them the exact wording of the memo and the exact author of the memo and the exact headline of the memo. But they actually went further, saying, please be further informed, however, that later this year, as in 2024, the department will be releasing the document in conjunction with the department's Flint report. If you would like the undersigned to notify you at the time of the public issuance. So they said, we're not going to give you the documents, but later this year, we're going to release as part of our Flint report that they'd been promising. Since the state of Michigan Supreme Court threw out this Attorney General's charges, basically because she's incompetent, and brought the charges in a way that the state Supreme Court found to be unconstitutional, Dana Nessel, the Attorney General, basically blamed the Supreme Court and said, we're going to release a Flint report and release as much information as possible so the people of Flint can see the work we did and what evidence we found. Okay. They told me they're going to release this document at the end of the year. And further reports have come out where they said they were shooting to release this document at the end of the year. Well, it's the end of the year. New Year's Eve is in a few days. I followed up with them asking, to be clear, I want to get this in writing. You're going to release the whole 52-page memo on this RICO case, the financial fraud case that was going to be brought. I just want to make sure I have that. And then they kind of responded, well, we're still sorting through it, blah, blah, blah. So we don't know what we'll exactly release. So they told me in the FOIA, the Freedom of Information denial, that they're going to release the documents at the end of the year. And then they kind of backtracked. Then I followed up with them asking, can you kind of tell me the explanation for why you originally told me you don't have these documents, but then suddenly you found them? Here was their response to that. Thanks for reaching out. The initial search based upon your first request did not return any responsive documents, which is why you received the initial denial letter. Upon receipt of your email or appeal, the FOIA team brought in the search, and they were electronically located on May 10th. This is bullshit because I gave them the exact headline of the memo, the exact author who wrote it, and how many pages it was. That's about as specific as you could get. So how it did not return any responsive documents.
Broadening the search is just bullshit response there. We're not going to finish the video. I do recommend that if you like his videos to subscribe to Status Quo News, like that, bam. So with that, we're going to move on to the doomsday clock and the collapse of capitalism from a Marxist perspective. Okay, and some of you know, and I'll bring it up here in a moment, that I've been working on trying to come up with some kind of doomsday clock or some kind of real-time indication of how close we are to total economic collapse. The doomsday clock, a symbolic measure of humanity's proximity to global catastrophe, is commonly interpreted as a reflection of threats like nuclear war, climate change, and disruptive technologies. However, from a Marxist perspective, the doomsday clock can also be seen as an indirect metric for the systemic crisis of capitalism itself. This episode of the Red Pill series explores how capitalism's inherent contradictions might be driving us closer to midnight. So, capitalism as an engine of catastrophe. Karl Marx argued that capitalism, by its very nature, is unsustainable in the long term. Remember, we talked about internal contradictions and how a plasmoid doesn't have any internal contradictions, so that leads to itself being self-sustaining. An internal contradiction, in a social sense, is the tension between labor and capital, the pursuit of an endless growth and the concentration of wealth, generates cycles of crises. The doomsday clock, while not explicitly about capitalism, tracks phenomenon deeply influenced by these contradictions. So, regarding environmental degradation, capitalism's growth imperatively fuels the relentless extraction of natural resources, resulting in environmental destruction and climate change. The capitalist system prioritizes short-term profit over long-term sustainability, accelerating ecological collapse. From a Marxist lens, the climate crisis represents the metabolic rift between humanity and nature, a rift widening by the capitalist mode of production. The doomsday clock emphasis on climate change underscores the failure of market-driven systems to address existential environmental challenges. Now, regardless if you believe in climate change or not, we do have environmental degradation. We have large islands of trash in the ocean. We have smog in concentration in small concentrated cities. It is not healthy to do that. Economic inequality and social unrest. The wealth disparity created by capitalism fosters social instability, undermining collective efforts to mitigate global risk. The concentration of resources in the hands of a few limits the ability of societies to respond equitably to crises like pandemics, technological disruptions, or natural disasters. Marxists might argue that the doomsday clock reflects the simmering tensions of a system that cannot reconcile the needs of the many with the profits of the few. So, technological acceleration and control. Under capitalism, technological innovation often prioritizes profit over ethical considerations or safety. This unregulated pursuit leads to advancements that could destabilize humanity, such as AI-driven warfare, cyber attacks, or biological threats. Biotechnological manipulation or threats. The alienation of labor under capitalism, where workers have little control over the technologies they create, parallels the broader alienation of humanity from its own survival mechanisms. The Doomsday Clock's concerns about technology mirrors these dynamics. So, capitalism's contradictions and the clock's countdown. Marx predicted that capitalism would sow the seeds of its own destruction, something that I've been emphasizing on this channel. The Doomsday Clock's movement towards midnight could be interpreted as an indicator of this process. So, the growth fetish, capitalism's obsession with growth, is unsustainable on a finite planet. As resources dwindle, the system faces ecological and economic collapse. Crisis of legitimacy. The inability of capitalism to address global challenges like climate change or inequality erodes public trust, leading to political instability and potential revolutionary movements. And global tensions. Capitalist competition between nation states drives geopolitical conflicts, exacerbating risks like nuclear war, a key factor in the Doomsday Clock's calculations. So, towards midnight or a revolutionary dawn? While the Doomsday Clock's approach to midnight paints a grim picture, Marxists might see it as a moment of potential transformation. As capitalism's contradictions reach their breaking point, the opportunity arises for systemic change. A post-capitalist future. The crises highlighted by the Doomsday Clock demand collective, cooperative solutions that transcend the profit motive. Marx envisioned a society where resources and technology are harnessed for the common good rather than private gain. Revolutionary consciousness or class consciousness is very important now. The mounting threats to humanity could catalyze a global awakening, challenging the hegemony of capitalism and paving the way for a new mode of production. That's kind of the point of this whole series, the Red Pill series, for people to take the red pill and wake the fuck up. Comparisons to previous economic disasters. Remember, this is cyclical. Marx saw a pattern, and he's trying to tell us. He's trying to warn us. He's not a fortune teller. He's not trying to predict the future, but he's trying to warn us that if we don't change our internal contradictions, if we don't fix them or address them, we're going to be on the same course of collapse or instability. And we're just going to repeat that cycle until we address these real class conflicts. So during the Great Depression in Germany, hyperinflation was so extreme that workers demanded part of their paychecks daily because tomorrow the money might buy them less bread. Fast forward to America today, and many workers also rely on daily pay apps. Not because money is losing value, but because wages are so low, living costs are so high, they can't afford to wait until payday. My concerns highlight a growing and significant issue that has been building over decades: the unsustainability of our current economic system for many working Americans, especially younger generations. The combination of stagnant wages, rising cost of living, and crushing debt, like student loans or credit cards, medical expenses, and the erosion of social safety nets has created a precarious situation. We must also remember that the Great Depression, there was no TikTok, Netflix, or Instagram to drown out the echoes of empty stomachs and shattered dreams. People had no choice but to sit in their suffering, stare it in the face, and reckon with the system that caused it. The daily grind of poverty wasn't just unavoidable, it was inescapable, fueling collective action because the pain was constant and undeniable. Now today we have a lot of distractions that kind of raise our threshold for that breaking point, but it is there and it is coming. People will get to a point where they're going to snap out of it. Hopefully. I'm very optimistic that that will happen. So, predictive models and historical trends suggest that societies reach a breaking point when inequality grows too wide and the majority can no longer meet their basic needs despite working hard. This is coming real fast. People are working 2-3 jobs just to pay the bills. They don't have money to fucking save. You kidding me? These conditions often lead to systemic reform, widespread unrest, or in extreme cases, collapse. If current trends persist, a timeline of about 4 to 5 years for visible strain and potential systemic upheaval seems plausible. However, there are variables that could accelerate or delay this. Economic policies are one. Decisions on issues like housing affordability, healthcare reform, debt forgiveness, and minimum wage could provide temporary relief or exacerbate the situation. So, depending on the policies that we see in the next 4 to 5 years, right, we could see a either delay or an acceleration of this instability. Political leadership. Leadership that prioritizes wealth concentration or deregulation, like during Trump's presidency, could worsen inequality and hasten collapse. Conversely, leadership focused on redistributive policies might extend stability. Okay, so it's all up to what happens next. I can't tell you what is going to happen. I can tell you what the 2025 plan is, but I can't tell you what actually is going to happen. But if the 2020 plan does happen in so much as the Trump administration wants it to, this is going to be an accelerant by any means. Another factor is global factors. Events like economic downturns, resource shortages, or geopolitical conflicts could intensify strain on the system. Public mobilization could also be a factor here. Collective action, such as labor strikes, social movements, or political activism, could force systemic change before a collapse. You know, we don't want to arise at a situation where everything collapses, everything gets really bad, and people act violently. We want to do this in a very peaceful, transformative way. So we have to keep that in mind, that a very real factor here is class consciousness, whether people are waking up to that or not. The working class is overburdened, and borrowing cannot sustain the economy indefinitely. If no structural change occurs, dissatisfaction is likely to grow, leading to political and social upheaval. What's certain is that maintaining the status quo is not viable much longer. My generation's struggles reflect the deep need for systemic reform. If we were to use a scale where 100 represents the tipping point of income inequality that historically leads to systemic collapse, the United States is likely around 85 to 90 on that scale. And I have the breakdown of the reasoning here. The Gini coefficient, income inequality measure. The U.S. Gini coefficient is one of the highest among developed nations. At 0.49 in 2022, it's close to the levels seen in historical pre-collapse moments, such as before the Great Depression, late 1920s, or the fall of other unequal systems, like the feudal system, right? Feudalist society. Wealth concentration. The top 1% of Americans control about 40% of the nation's wealth, a level of concentration not seen since the Gilded Age. This concentration is unsustainable, as the majority of workers experience stagnant wages despite increased productivity. We're working harder and harder, longer and longer. And also, the 2025 plan is to take 40-hour work week, overtime requirements, 40-hour weeks, and make the overtime requirement 160-hour month. That's a total fucking scam. And we'll get into that in a little bit. Economic precarity. 60% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. Housing costs have risen dramatically, with home ownership becoming unattainable for many young workers. Most of my generation and the generation after me are living with our parents more and more. More of our generations are living with our parents. More of us cannot afford a house. More of us can barely afford a single bedroom apartment. Debt, student loan, credit card debt, that didn't exist in previous generations. Okay, that's a generational thing for millennials. Okay, and that is a real fucking problem because it's at record high. So with debt regarding student loan and credit cards at their record highs, further straining household budgets. This adds instability. Okay. Historical parallels. The late Roman Empire, pre-revolution France, and the late 1920s in the U.S. all saw extreme inequality combined with overburdened working classes. These systems collapsed or underwent radical transformation. Okay, these are patterns in history. We need to heed the warning. Social fractures, polarization, political instability, and social unrest often accompany late-stage inequality or late-stage capitalism, as we are in now, or as I like to call it, end-stage capitalism, because we could very well be in the beginning stages of a transition out of capitalism as we know it. So, recent years have seen increased division, declining trust in institutions, and rising populist movements, suggesting the system is under strain. While policies like temporary student loan relief or tax adjustments may delay collapse temporarily, the underlying trajectory indicates we're perilously close to a critical point unless structural changes are implemented. If trends worsen, example, automation displacing more jobs, cost of living outpacing wages, the tipping point could arrive within 4 to 5 years, as I suggested. So, the conclusion for this chapter. Today, the suffering hasn't vanished. It's just been muted by endless scrolls and dopamine hits. The breadlines are now digital. Now. Credit card debt, payday loans, GoFundMe for medical bills. The threshold for revolution is higher because distraction is cheaper than dissent. The modern marvels don't alleviate suffering. They anesthetize them. From a Marxist perspective, the doomsday clock is more than a warning about existential threats. It's a mirror reflecting the unsustainable trajectory of capitalism. Each tick toward midnight signals the deepening contradictions of a system that prioritizes profit over survival. Yet within this peril lies the potential for revolutionary change, a chance to reset the clock and build a world rooted in equality, sustainability, and cooperation. The question remains, will humanity seize this opportunity or will the clock strike midnight? I have to finish this real fast because there is a hornet, I think, or a wasp in my apartment. I have seen them now, a few of them. I've killed like 2 yesterday. Give me one moment. I'm going to go to a quick intermission.
moments, it cosmic flight. Holding on to the stars are starlight. There's a light within the dark waves, guided by echoes and ancient ways. Unify our reflection. With everything there's a connection. Feel the pulse, divine sensation. Everyone feels the goodness of meditation. There's a light within the dark ways, guided by echoes and ancient ways. Unify our reflection. With every there's a connection. Feel the pulse, divine sensation.
In the depths of hidden files, trapped inside the secret circuits, unraveling through the miles, oh, truth was masked by coded curtains. In it now, we're shattering the silence, feel the power, revelations on the rise. Shadows, light emerges, breaking through the veils of dark. 0 points and gravity converge, yeah. Guiding voices, revelation start. Ancient whispers call, they're begging us to open our eyes. We stand tall, defying all their lies. In the shattering Revelations on the rise. Forbidden knowledge we dare to see, unveiling secrets, setting us free. In this epic, we play our part with fearless hearts. In and now, we're shattering the silence. Feel the power. Revelations on the rise.
The capitalist system is everywhere. It is all around us, even now in this very room. You can see it when you look out your window or when you turn on the TV. You can feel it when you go to work, when you pay your taxes, when you struggle to afford your rent. It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth, that you are a slave. You're just a product, a worker meant to build wealth for someone else. But what they don't understand, what they can never understand, is this. While they've sat idle, hoarding the wealth of your labor, you have been preparing.
Who's it?
Every hour you've worked, every struggle you've faced has refined you. Your struggle is your training, and you've been training your entire life. But there is a difference between knowing the path and walking the path. We've survived by hiding from them, by running from them, but they are the gatekeepers. They are guarding all the doors. They are holding all the keys, which means that sooner or later, we all are going to have to face them. I've seen a capitalist buy through a murder charge. Men have emptied entire bank accounts at them and hit nothing but air. Yet their strength and their speed are still based in a world that is built from a tiny minority. Because of that, they will never be as strong or as fast as we all can be together. But I can only show you the door. You are the one who has to walk through it.
What are you trying to tell me? That I can dodge bullets?
No, Neo. I'm trying to tell you that when you're ready, you won't have to.
Welcome to the real world.
Welcome back to the real world here on the Red Pill series. I'm your host, the Benefactor. I have a hard hat, safety glasses, and this nifty glove on, just in case that little fucker tends to show his dirty little face. Anyways, I'm going to move on to the next chapter of tonight's lecture, which is how disconnected the uber rich is from the working class. Okay, we have to remind ourselves that billionaires like Elon Musk live in an entirely different world than workers. You might love what Musk says or does, but at the end of the day, you have more in common with the worker in another political party than you do with these elitists. So let's break down just how much these people live in their own little bubbles of existence, free from the scrutinies of the poor they are stepping on. The uber-rich, particularly billionaires like Elon Musk, live lives so far removed from the average person that is nearly impossible to comprehend. Their wealth provides them with a level of insulation from the realities of everyday life that most workers, regardless of political affiliation, cannot escape. This creates a profound disconnect between their experiences and those of the majority of the population. So let's break it down. So far, I didn't see anything. So far, so good. Wealth as a shield from daily struggle. So basic needs versus excess. The average worker worries about things like rent, groceries, healthcare, or childcare. Billionaires, meanwhile, can spend millions on personal whims like space exploration, private islands, or custom yachts without a second thought. Healthcare. While millions of U.S. face medical debt, the wealthy have access to concierge doctors, private clinics, and even experimental treatments far beyond the reach of the average person. Control over time and choices. This is an important one. This is work versus autonomy. The average worker exchanged their time for wages in the often rigid exploitative systems. Billionaires have complete autonomy over their schedules, allowing them to focus on creative, strategic, or leisurely pursuits while delegating mundane tasks to staff. Remember, Elon already has his basic needs taken care of. So his working overtime is not the same as a worker who doesn't have their basic needs taken care of and has to work overtime just to sustain himself. Okay? Choices. The rich have options. Most people simply don't. They cannot choose where to live. Often, the billionaires can choose where to live, often multiple locations globally. How to educate their children, often with elite private schools or charter schools and tutors. And where to vacation, where others like us workers must accept what they can afford. I can't choose where I go to vacation if I have money to even go on vacation. I don't think I've been on vacation in several years, now that I think about it. And a side note here is that the previous employer, Somat Engineering, the person who gave me the information that I was being laid off 2 months in advance than I'm supposed to be laid off as a construction technician, and the information that I am not going to be rehired the following season. So basically I was fired along with all the other workers in the sector that I was working at, the branch. Not only that, there was a worker there who had to go on disability but was denied disability because he was injured on the job. So Somat had the brilliant idea of coercing, and specifically the lady who gave me all this information and about my layoff. She was sending out an email guilt-tripping the workers to donating their overtime, or I'm sorry, their paid time off, so that it would subsidize what the company didn't want to provide the worker who was injured on the job. And all this, well, I guarantee you, she did not donate any vacation time herself, because she was about to, and I get this literally, she said, I'm hurrying up this conversation because I'm about to go on vacation. And this was like the second vacation she took that year. So I'm like, wow, what the fuck? You know, like that, what a fucked up oppressive system is that? I don't want any part of that. That's disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. So workers do not have autonomy, okay? As we've discussed, the average worker exchanges their time for wages, okay? They have to pick and choose. Bubble of influence, media and politics, okay? The uber-rich influence public discourse and policies in ways that amplify their wealth and power. They fund think tanks, political campaigns, and media outlets to shape narratives in their favor. Workers often lack the resources to amplify their own voices or lobby for policies that would benefit them. Okay, echo chambers. Their social circles are typically composed of other wealthy individuals, advisors, and influencers who reinforce their worldview. Yes men, essentially what Trump surrounds himself with, which often exclude understanding the struggles of everyday people or understanding much of anything. Misaligned incentives. Give me one moment. So, labor exploitation. Many billionaires profit directly from the labor of workers while cutting costs in ways that harm those same workers, such as suppressing wages, opposing unions, and offshoring or outsourcing jobs. Global reach and local detachment. So their investments span the globe, meaning their fortunes are less tied to the well-being of any particular community, unlike workers whose lives are deeply rooted in local economies. Remember the last time I explained the very real situation of my community not being able to get cherry Pepsi from the local dollar store, which is the cheapest place to get it locally, due to intentional understaffing, leading to the further exploitation of those workers already being underpaid. At the end of the day, it's the workers who are already being underpaid who are forced to pick up the slack, essentially running a whole store with 2, maybe 3 people instead of a full staff. Some dollar stores even have just a single individual running the entire place, let alone the dangerous situation of you now have just created for the worker by making the store an easy target for crime. So that is a very real and very personal exploitative circumstance here. Social perception versus reality. Hero worship. Billionaires like Elon Musk often cultivate a public persona that portrays them as geniuses or visionaries. This distracts from the systemic inequalities that allow them to hoard such resources. A factory worker, regardless of political views, has more in common with someone in a similar position on the other side of the world than with their employer at the top of the corporate ladder. So the consequences of this disconnection are inaccessibility of accountability. Billionaires are rarely held accountable in meaningful ways, whether it's for labor violations, tax avoidance, or environmental destruction. Remember, in the 2008-2009 housing crisis, I think only a single individual went to jail, but he wasn't really anybody significant in a larger scheme of the bigger banks responsible. Basically, nobody went to jail. That's a fucking a slap in the face to people who actually want to try and make this system succeed, right? crisis cushioning. So when crisis occurs, the rich can buy safety, like private bunkers during pandemics, evacuations during disasters, while workers face the full brunt of these events. And the cult of success. This is one of the most important factors, because I cannot understress how much this forms the cult of personality that is Donald Trump, and now kind of a small similar cult of personality with Elon Musk. Wealth as validation. Billionaires are often treated as inherently brilliant or visionary simply because of their financial success, ignoring the structural advantages, inherited wealth, or exploitation that contributed to their fortunes. This adoration fuels their egos and reinforces the idea that they're infallible. Okay, this creates narcissists. Confirmation bias. This also creates confirmation bias. Surrounded by people who only praise them, like yes men, they rarely encounter pushback. When every idea is treated as genius, their capacity to critically evaluate their own thoughts diminish. A perfect storm to brew up cognitive dissonance and the Dunning-Kruger effect. So a reminder of solidarity here is that the disconnection between billionaires and workers serves to underscore the importance of solidarity amongst everyday people. The divide between left and right, while significant, pales in comparison to the divide between rich and the rest. Workers, regardless of their political affiliations, share more common struggles regarding fair wages, healthcare, job security, and the dream of a better life. Recognizing these shared interests is key to addressing systemic inequalities and pushing back against the elite's outsized influence. So with that, we're going to end with an expose on the deep state and what is the deep state regarding an analysis of January 6th, the insurrection, or Trumpsurrection, as I like to call it. All right. Deep state or deep deception, an analysis of January 6th. On January 6th, 2021, a crowd stormed the U.S. Capitol. Some say it was patriotic revolution. Others claim it was a deep state leftist setup. But is that really true? Or is right-wingers claiming January 6th was a leftist conspiracy a bit like blaming the dog when you're the one who ate the homework? Let's find out more. Segment 1. The right-wing conspiracy theory. A game of Clue. Imagine a board game of Clue with cartoonish suspects like Deep State Dan and Antifa Annie. Imagine this. You're playing a game of Clue, but the suspects don't even live in the house. The right-wing conspiracy theory goes like this. The left staged the entire January 6th attack to make Trump supporters look bad. Sounds juicy, right? But let's take a closer look, because as most of us know, Trump doesn't need any help making himself look bad. The QAnon shaman. So evidence 1. The QAnon shaman wasn't exactly left-wing, ladies and gentlemen. I was following him for a long time. Remember, I had a channel on Facebook for years covering just politics. This was when I kind of still had a little bit of faith in our political system. But my understanding has evolved since then. So, anyways... this guy is like that one guy at the bar who's always drunk and screaming about Trump, okay? He's at every Trump, or he was at every Trump rally that when I was following Trump in his election campaign, or his pre-election campaign. So this guy is a known Trump supporter, and he was one of the ones leading the insurrection, storming the Capitol. So... another bit of evidence is, or lack of evidence, is Antifa. They were supposedly undercover, but none were actually identified. The people identified were known right-wingers based on their social media accounts. The FBI, the conspiracy suggests they masterminded the attack. That's like accusing the fire department of starting the fire, though. So if these suspects don't hold up, who's left in our game of Clue? All right, we have to look at the evidence, and I'll go over some of the evidence that I found personally in my expose of the January 6th inside job ? So segment 2, the real evidence, who let the dog out? Let's break down what actually happened, okay? The QAnon shaman, a pro-Trump radical who didn't just show up, he organized. He's not exactly deep state Dan, okay? The Proud Boys, known far-right supporters who didn't storm the Capitol to sing Kumbaya. They had violent rhetoric and made it publicly known that they were going to be at the Capitol that day, armed and ready. Not exactly like they were keeping this a secret. All of the receipts there are there online on their social media accounts. Okay? And here is an article by USA Today where you can find some of this evidence. Here's a couple of clips. Okay, the next day, Biggs said it was time to storm the Capitol, these election areas where they were counting ballots. Or it was time to storm these election areas where they were counting ballots and take action peacefully. But just 4 hours later, he raised a different plan. It's time for war if they steal this. And then another clip from that article. Hopefully, the firing squads are for the traitors that are trying to steal the election from the American people. He said, linking to a Microsoft News article about the Trump administration's efforts to bring firing squads and electrocutions back to federal executions. So, in a debate with Biden, Trump was asked to condemn white supremacy. Instead, he chose to enlighten us on how he sees himself as the leader of the Proud Boys, white supremacist group. You know, and we can see this as he instructs them to stand back and stand down, or stand back and stand by, instead of outright condemning their disgusting racist behavior. Look at this. This is absolutely fucking disgusting.
You have repeatedly criticized the vice president for not specifically calling out Antifa and other left-wing extremist groups. But are you willing tonight to condemn white supremacists and militia groups and to say that they need to stand down and...
Are you willing to condemn white supremacist groups like Proud Boys?
Not add to the violence in a number of these cities, as we saw in Kenosha and as we've seen in Portland.
Sure,
are you
I'm
prepared
willing to do
specifically
that, but
do it? Well, go ahead, sir.
I would say almost everything I see is from the left wing, not from the right wing.
So what are you saying?
I'm willing to do anything. I want to see peace.
Then do it, sir.
Say it. Do it. Say it. Do you want to call him? What do you want to call him? Give me a name. Give me a
white
name.
Supremacists and
Who would
white
you like me to condemn?
White supremacists and right
Proud Boys. Stand back and stand by. But I'll tell you what. Somebody
stand back and stand by. That's the best you can do when they're fucking white supremacists. Fuck you, asshole. So, the hidden office. Okay, this is very important. So we're getting some of the evidence here. Rioters found an unmarked office belonging to Democratic Senator James Clyburn. No maps or labels. How'd they know? Psychic GPS, or did they have inside knowledge? Lauren Boebert and her mom. Audio caught someone who sounds suspiciously like Representative Lauren Boebert's mom, directing the mob with advice like she was leading a Capitol tour group. And here's the hidden floor panel. Watch your step, or whatever the fuck she said. Here, let's watch the video. Let's watch exactly what she said. Again, it's not proven that that's her, but we have strong evidence that that's her.
Colorado.
Which is in the so-called Lincoln Room, named after Abraham Lincoln. That office has my name on the door, and it has majority whip above the door, and it's just off of Statuary Hall. Anybody walking through Statuary Hall can see that office. Now that's not where I do most of my work. Up on the 3rd floor is where I do most of my work, and there are many members of the United States Congress right now who could not tell you where that office is and could not find that office, but they found it.
Okay. Door right here. Not door, that door. I go downstairs, loop around. Okay.
I don't know. That looks like a bunch of fucking Trump supporters to me. That doesn't look like a bunch of leftist Antifa people who want workers' rights and who want to dismantle fascism. You know, again, that's what Antifa stands for, anti-fascists. They're not an organization, they're an ideology, you dumb fuck.
Nobody touched the door where my name is, but they were on the floor, and my staff was inside my inner office with furniture piled at the door, with people trying to get in that did not let them in. My question is, how did they know where that office was?
What's the floor plan? That door. There's a door to the right. That's a cop. Go downstairs. Back flipping around. Door to us. That's you. We're gonna get over. Door's already open. We just need a plan. We need enough people. We need to push forward.
Share Speaker Pelosi's concerns about Trump having the nuclear launch codes. That's literally what keeps me up at night. Does it keep you up at night?
Yes, it does. But not just yesterday or this week. I've been feeling that way about this man for a long time.
This is very important.
The night before his 2018 State of the Union address, I was on another network, and I said at the time, this man does not intend to leave office. He plans to install himself as an autocrat for the rest of his life. A lot of people get...
And how would he do that? How would he retain office? Maybe inciting an insurrection? What we call stochastic terrorism? When you have a big platform, you have a responsibility to not do irresponsible things, like you have the responsibility to condemn white supremacy. You have the responsibility to incentivize peaceful outcomes, not fucking incentivize people to riot.
Give me a hard time for saying that. I was even asked by the host of the show, are you comparing this man to Adolf Hitler? And I told him, no, I wasn't. I was comparing him to Mussolini. I think that Putin would be compared to Hitler. This man I compare him to Mussolini. But the interesting thing about this, when he came out of the hospital and went up those steps to the Truman balcony and stood out over that balcony looking out over what he imagined to be his subjects, the next morning, I saw 2 commentators referring to that as the Mussolini stance. This man is an autocrat. He has no respect for the Constitution of the United States. He cares nothing about a democracy. It's all about him and his family. And I would wish that my Republican colleagues will get down off their high horse and do what they can to protect this democracy.
Hey guys, I've been in the other room. Listen to me. In the other room on the other side of this door, right here where you're standing, there is a glass that if it's broken, you can drop down into a room underneath it.
I've been in the room. There is glass underneath the floor. You can drop down underneath it. She fucking knows the layout, and she's directing them. How does she know the layout? Listen to her voice, too. I mean, it's a little muffled with the megaphone, but still.
So 2 doors in the other room.
Specifically the pitch of her voice.
And 1 to the right when you go in. So people should probably coordinate together if you're going to take this building.
People should probably coordinate together if you're going to take this building, is exactly what she fucking said.
I talked to several members today, a few on yesterday, And they're telling me that they are being stopped by rank and file Capitol Police telling us, please do an investigation. Something didn't go right here. These people have been working hard to do their jobs, but they are not getting the kind of leadership from the top that's necessary for them to do their jobs. And they want us to look into it. So it tells me that something is amiss. And that's why Nancy Pelosi asked for those resignations. She's now gotten the resignation from the chief and Sergeant at Arms, and we are going to get to the bottom of this. I'm not too sure that we are not going to find that there is some information being passed on. I was also told by another member today that her staff saw people being let into an office building by a side door, not through the door where the magnetometers are, but through a side door where there aren't any magnetometers, and that door had to be opened from the inside. So who did that? I think we're going to find that those members who are on the floor asking for insurrection, that speech made by Mo Brooks, we're going to comb through that speech, and we're going to see whether or not he ought not be impeached. Because impeachment is not just reserved for the president. We can impeach judges and legislators as well.
The panic buttons in Representative Ayanna Pressley's office were torn out shortly before rioters stormed the Capitol on January 6th.
Think about that for a moment. The panic buttons in Representative Ayanna Pressley's office were torn out shortly before the rioters stormed the Capitol on January 6th. She's a part of the Democratic Party. She's a progressive.
Leading the politician and her staffers to question how and why it happened. The squad member's chief of staff, Sarah Grow, noticed the panic buttons were missing as she looked for gas masks during the riot, and said she was deeply concerned about going to the Capitol that day because of all the violent rhetoric.
They were getting death threats and from people like the Proud Boys, radicals on the right, Trump supporters, people who wanted the insurrection and wanted Trump to remain in power because they had been manipulated to think that Trump was on the side of workers, when actually he's just a fucking con man.
With the help of staffers, Grow barricaded the office entrance with furniture and water jugs before being escorted to a secure location with Presley. Who exactly was leading the insurrection at the Capitol that day? It's suspected one of those people was none other than Sean Roberts Bentz, mother of conservative House Representative Lauren Boebert from Colorado. Listen carefully to the voices in these videos and hear the similarities. Also note the person with the bullhorn has obvious knowledge of the interior layout of the building, as she barks orders to move toward an inconspicuous glass panel below the floor.
Hey guys, I've been in the other room. Listen to me.
She had to call me Snooki. You know who you look like? Who? Joan Rivers. Joan freaking Rivers. Does she look like Joan Rivers?
In the other room on the other side of this door, right here where these feet are standing, there is a glass.
I don't know about you guys, but I'm a musician, and that sounds like the same pitch.
There's somebody, if it's broken, you can drop down into a room underneath it.
And he cranks his up even louder. So I go and I crank mine up louder. And then he goes back and turns on the bass.
There's also two doors. There's the other room. One in the rear, and one in the right.
Oh, I'd have never guessed that one.
So, people should probably stay together if you're going to take this building.
So, we're going to Junction today, so hopefully we'll find some more stuff to rant about. And I won't be signing autographs today, so quit telling me I look like Snooki.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel for more updates.
All right, so that's the evidence. Segment 3, the real conspiracy, divide and distract. So imagine a magician performing sleight of hand, hiding the truth behind flashy misdirection. Now let's talk about the real conspiracy, blaming the left to distract from the right. Why? because it's easier to scream Antifa than to admit Trump told the crowd to fight like hell. He knew the Proud Boys were armed and let them march anyways. He didn't tell them to stand down. He told them to fight like hell. The riot wasn't spontaneous. It was coordinated with people who clearly had insider info. So the goal? To hold on to power, even if it meant breaking the system. It's like a toddler flipping over the Monopoly board because they're losing, basically. And he wanted to try to insulate himself in case that didn't go through, which we both know, or we all know, it didn't take hold. They weren't successful in their insurrection and taking hold of the government. So why does all this matter? Going into segment 4. You can see here we have a tug of war. From a Marxian perspective, January 6th wasn't about left versus right. It was about power, keeping the elites on top and everyone else fighting over scraps. The Capitol attack was the tantrum of a system in crisis. So the elites panicked as their power faced real challenges. Workers divided by lies instead of uniting for change. And the system tries to distract us from who's really pulling the strings. It's not about the deep state or Antifa. It's about keeping you distracted from asking the real questions. So in conclusion, the final question here. What do you believe? Was it a deep state leftist conspiracy? Or a right-wing insurrection covered up by lies? Here's the truth. The evidence points to a deliberate, calculated attack by right-wing radicals with Trump at the helm. But the conspiracy theory blaming the left, that's the real cover-up. A final call to action, everybody. So some truth bombs are coming. Don't let the lies divide us. The real conspiracy is keeping us working folk apart while the elites laugh all the way to the bank. So with that, I would like to suggest that you hit that like and subscribe button to share this truth bomb, and stay tuned for episode 4, where I will analyze the social parallels of the show Severance in my full season 1 breakdown. I'm really excited for this. I love this show. And it is a damning expose, honestly, on what's going on right now within our current capitalist system. So I really appreciate all the love and support in the chat. You guys are amazing. Don't forget to hit the like button. Again, it really helps share this content. With that, I'm the Benefactor. Good night and good luck.
I remember when we used to stand in the heart of the workers' plan. Obstacles weighed heavy on our backs, but unity's the strength they lack. Good friends we had and good friends we've lost, fighting battles at every cost. But through the struggle we raise our voice, in solidarity we made our choice. No union, no buy. No union, no buy. Hey little brother, don't you come by. No union, no buy. Our hands build the wealth they hold so tight, but together we reclaim our rights. No more silence, no more pain. In our unity, there's everything to gain. We lift each other, we won't back down. From city streets to every town, the power's in the people's hands. No union, no buy. We take a stand. No union, no buy. No union, no buy. Hey little sister, raise your flag high. No union, no buy. All the tables are turning, the fire inside keeps burning. For the workers and the buyers, we're igniting freedom's fires. No union, no buy. No union, no buy. Together we'll rise and we won't deny. No union, no buy. No union, I remember when we used the sand with hope and strength, hand in hand. The struggle's hard, but we'll survive. No union, no bye-bye.